Hey everybody, what's going on? Rob Cesternino back here for the second of our Survivor Tribe previews. And here I am back with the man who's at the center of everything this preseason. Give it up for Mike Bloom.
I suppose I am the sun in this heliocentric Survivor preseason universe. Everything revolves around me, Rob. And today we're talking about 6 formidable blue-hued planets in the Coco tribe.
Coco. Oh, what a fun tribe name to say. Coco.
I mean, listen, could this be one of the most fun tribes to say in a good amount of time on Survivor?
Yeah.
I might put in like an early petition for yes. I'd love to hear arguments against it, but it's very fun to say.
All right. Well, excited to get to the interviews that Mike got back from the 6 members of the Coco tribe. On Friday, we listened to the interviews from 6 members of the Vesey tribe. That podcast is up. We also chopped them up individually and uploaded them to the Rob is a Podcast YouTube channel at robisawebsite.com/YouTube. You can find all those. Presumably, we will do the same with, unless something goes horribly wrong, Mike.
I mean, listen, I think that we'll do enough to separate them unless we really just dote in and out of various interviews. Yeah, we're going to take the strategy of, much like the great Nick Gonzalez said once upon a time, chopping them up like poop and sorting the poop out to their respective receptacles. And we're going to do the same here so that not only do you get a nice big taste if you want the whole thing, but also like little individual bite-sized pieces. Please don't eat poop. That's my PSA.
Don't do that.
The top here.
Don't do that. Okay. All right. Mike, so anything else you want to set up before we talk Coco?
So overlooking Coco, you know, the preseason expectations, I think, looking at these 3 tribes is that, as I talked about last time, Vesey, I think, is expected to be a bit more of our powerhouse in the challenges comparatively, maybe going to tribal council once, maybe even not at all. Baka, which we'll talk about next time, seems much more like the train wrecky, okay, your ass will be going to TC a lot tribe. Coco is truly the Goldilocks tribe, despite it having blue buffs instead of yellow. It seems like they are somewhere in the middle here.
Okay. All right. So we've got 6 Coco interviews coming up. We will talk about our 3rd and final tribe, Baka, later this week. Make sure you subscribe to Rob's podcast to make sure you don't miss any of that at robhasawebsite.com/subscribe. Mike, are we ready to talk about our first person?
Yeah, let's get right into it. Very excited to start here by talking about the youngest person on this tribe and one of the youngest people in the cast. That's another interesting thing about sort of like the cast divisions this season, is that they did do a pretty good job, I think, of sort of allocating, you know, dividing by age, relatively speaking, whether it be like dividing up the older members of the cast and the younger members as well. We were talking about Cassidy Clark.
Okay, Mike, what do we know about Cassidy Clark?
So Cassidy is a fashion designer. She is a Texas native. She is a recent college graduate. She fashions herself quite literally the creative type. And she is, I believe, 26 years old, which still is not like hugely young, but still, again, comparatively to a lot of this other cast, which firmly finds themselves like within the realm of the 30s. Maybe it's the look as well. We talked about her pick, by the way, speaking of look, on our in our first impressions show. Probably has one of the best served looks in Survivor when it comes to you know, these cast photos. And I would imagine out there on the island, she is gonna put some of our greatest fashionistas to shame. Rob, you and I talked with Jacob Jones, you know, and I went up that list, right, about like Survivor shirts. I feel like give her a hatchet and like she'd be able to make a lot of outfits work for her tribe.
Do you want to give her some sort of like Pearl Island style Survivor sewing machine?
I mean, I want to do that every season just to see, like, I want Project Birthday to always happen. Yeah, every Cassidy, I love the sarong that you made. I do think that I think it's fun. I think we should do it each and every season because I want to do like almost a challenge within a challenge, a game within a game. You will. Who can make the best outfits? We talk about providers at camp, and usually that comes down to building fires, catching fish. We don't speak a lot about, you know, quality of life. It gets cold out there. Cassidy is able to construct a cardigan to give some of her, you know, colder tribe members. I think that that's
cardigan's a lot of work. That's a lot of knitting.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if there's one person that could do it, it could be someone who...
Does she knit?
I mean, I would imagine she does that. Maybe it's wrong for me to assume. I'm trying to think, like, have we really had a designer since Brett Klauser back in Survivor Samoa?
We'll go back and check the archives. If not, Twitter will let us know.
Oh yeah, I mean, listen, we certainly had wannabe designers and Brad Culpepper both in interior decorating as well as his own fashion sense. But I don't
Yeah.
know when it comes to like your occupation. We had a designer in quite some time, so Cassidy is bringing it back.
Okay. All right, Mike. Anything else we want to set up before we hear from Cassidy herself?
So if you happen to chance upon this without listening to our Vessi Tribe preview, just to quickly set up how this is going to work, I had the ability to ask questions that Rob and I collaborated on to the contestants days before they went out to play. Now, of course, they were asked by producers. The answers were recorded. I did a little bit of audio magic and recorded the questions and spliced them in here to make it seem like I was the one asking the questions. But we're going to play our way through the audio interviews on the podcast, stop down on occasion, talk them through. We'll also bring in stuff from her bio, from her 1-minute video that have now been making the rounds on social media. So we're going to try to use this as an opportunity to really get a deeper dive into these players and try to figure out, particularly within the configuration of this starting tribe, since we know they're going to spend the entire pre-merge within these tribes, how it's going to shape out.
Okay. All right. So let's go ahead, Mike. What is our safe word today to stop the recording?
Okay, so if we're going with the Survivor 42 silly phrases, we already did Bunny Rabbit in the Mailbox mailbag. We have there is such grace in the game of soccer, it makes me cry. And then we also have the whole I have skin, potatoes have skin, am I a potato? So you picked your poison here.
I'm feeling potato today.
All right, so we'll say potato. Listen, we just got off of a 3-day weekend where some of us were feeling probably as lazy as a potato, like a couch potato, perhaps. And so
I ate a lot of potatoes. Yeah.
I don't think lazy as a potato is even any sort of idiom.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we will stop in with anything we need to add with the word potato. All right. Without further ado, here is Cassidy Clark.
Start off. Tell us about yourself. Give us your name, age, and occupation.
My name is Cassidy Clark. I am 26 years old, and I'm a fashion designer and an artist.
Why are you here on Survivor?
I'm here on Survivor because this has been literally a lifelong dream of mine. You know, I started watching the show back when it started, when I was 4 years old at the time, and I never stopped watching it. I never missed a season or an episode. I mean, this has been like a lifelong thing for me. And, you know, I grew up and evolved with Survivor as Survivor grew and changed along with me. And so, I mean, this is something I've wanted to do since I was a kid. I can't believe it's here now. It's surreal that it's actually come into fruition, but I'm so excited. I'm so prepared. I mean, I have like all of the information you could possibly want to go into this game just because, you know, I've just watched and rewatched the show so much, but yeah, that is why I want to play.
What's your history with watching Survivor?
So I started watching it with my family when I was little. We'd make like a big deal out of it. You know, we'd have our weekly routine where we all gather together, stay up a little late, a little extra late from before school, and we'd all watch as a family. And that was really special for me growing up as a kid, like before my parents got divorced at an early age. Like that was really the most special memory for me growing up, is being all together as a family watching Survivor. So it really holds that, like, that, you know, those values of family and being a whole single unit. And it was just, I mean, it was just something that like was a constant for me, even when my parents did get divorced and I started moving a lot and things started changing for me. It became that constant in my life, you know, that thing I could look forward to, that I could escape into. And so that it's always been so special to me. And then as I got older, you know, I continued watching it, and then I started, you know, participating in a fantasy league with my brothers and their friends who are like huge. We're all huge fans of the show. So we've been doing fantasy leagues for the last couple of years. Me and my brothers still uphold the tradition of like doing like a big feast for Survivor finales, which is what we did when we were kids. And, you know, we all auditioned together. So it's been like a real like family experience for me as, you know, growing up and as a kid. And yeah, I mean, and now I get to play. So it's like all come full circle.
Potato.
Yeah. So it's a real family affair for Cassidy. And look, there are certainly people that say, including in this season, right? I grew up watching it with my family. It's a staple every Wednesday/Thursday night. This may be the first, though, I've heard, Rob, of American Idol style. We all audition for the show together. I don't know if they were banking on some sort of Blood versus Water 3, or if it's just like, hey, it triples or quadruples the chances of us getting on the show and representing our last name.
Somebody will get in. Sure.
It's just odd to think about, though. Like, imagine them all going to an open call. I don't know if this is something that usually happens, right? Where it's like, hi, I'm Cassidy Clark, blah, blah, blah. They do their interview, and then it's like, hi, I'm Kurt Clark. I don't know why that's the first name that came to mind for me. But it's like, wait a minute, are you related to that last person? And does that help or hurt their impression in the big, casting Rolodex if they are related to another person who's auditioning?
And it's interesting because I feel like that Survivor would probably not ever do something like this, but Big Brother definitely would. Of wouldn't that be interesting in a Survivor season if like somebody and their relative was on another tribe? Like, would it come up? Like, it would be very fun, I think, to happen a season, but it's just like not the kind of thing, for whatever reason, Survivor has ever been interested in doing.
Yeah, the closest we've gotten is more the incidental stuff, right? Like the Allie and Patrick from season 35 of like, okay, they know each other. But I agree. I think that's distinctly different from they're related. They have a relationship outside of the game. I think perhaps unlike Big Brother, Survivor does try to be a bit more fair in that casting, right? Of like, let's try to create a group of perfect strangers to the best of our ability, with the exception of something like an Allie and a Patrick. But I agree. That would be really interesting, of like undercover Blood versus Water, where it's a Blood versus Water season, but like only the pair knows that they're the only pair in the game, right? They only assume that, okay, I only have one relative and everyone else is paired.
Or do you make it, they're all pairs? Do you tell them all they're the only one?
That's what I'm saying, right? It's like, okay, Cassidy and Kurt, you guys are playing, but you're the only pair, and you have to make sure you get to the end without anybody noticing. But really, all the other 8 couples have been told this as well.
And maybe they felt like, okay, we'll apply for Survivor together. Like, worst case scenario is they'll put us on The Amazing Race.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we were talking about people jockeying for The Amazing Race on other reality shows. So, especially with Jesse Tannenbaum casting all 3 shows, people are looking to
just get in the door.
Exactly, get your foot in the door, because then that'll open multitudinous other doors within CBS reality.
Okay. All right. Let's get back to Cassidy.
Give me one Survivor winner and one non-winner who you identify with the most.
Yeah. So I can give you 2 actually that from the same season, just to make it easy. But so there was one winner from the season of David versus Goliath, who, Nick Wilson. The reason I feel so connected to him is I picked him for my draft pick, and that was the only Survivor Fantasy League season that I've won. and I remember messaging him on Instagram and being like, oh, like, I picked you for my, Survivor draft. I hope you win. And he was like, oh, I hope so. Like, we'll see. And it was just so epic, because his win at the end, like how he just, like, everything that he had to go through to get to where he was. And then him like winning all those immunities in a row, because he was like on the chopping block every time, like making it all the way to the finale that way was just so impressive. It was such a fun season finale to watch. And also I know that he talked about his mother struggling from drug addiction. I think I could be wrong, but I think she ended up passing away from like an overdose or something similar. And that's what happened to my sister. So I really felt for him, like, in those moments when he was talking about it, because I've also gone through that loss, And so that also connected me to him. And then from the same season, Christian Hubicki, who didn't win, but like, I loved him so much. He was just such a fun character to watch. And he just had such a kind, sweet heart, but he was also just so funny and intelligent. He really was just like such a well-rounded person for me. And I felt connected to him too, just because of, he's just a really awesome person. I think most people would agree with that.
What's your favorite moment?
Yes.
I agree with that. Yeah, I definitely co-sign that statement about Christian Hubicki being very kind and funny.
Yeah. I'll fight somebody who says he's not.
What do you make of the Nick Wilson response of the Instagram DM of like, oh, I picked you in your draft, hope you win. And he's like, yeah, I know I've already won. How do I respond to this without giving anything away?
Yeah. Not a situation that I would have any experience in dealing with. So, yeah, I think that maybe like you probably just want to do like a thumbs up.
Like, cool. Nice to
Yeah.
meet you. See you on the
Yeah.
beach.
Yeah. Like, should be a fun season.
Yeah, exactly. But then that's really fun because then it very much gives me like, oh God, he got voted out first, which listen, he nearly did. But like still like, oh man, he's just using these generalisms. People are looking into anything and everything from social media in these preseasons as to like how they're gonna do on the island. I think you have to pick your words carefully. Though again, if you have $1 million check basically guaranteed, say whatever the hell you want, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's go back to Cassidy.
What's your favorite moment in Survivor history?
So I'll just keep rolling with the Christian thing. There's one episode where he wins immunity and he's just like talking Jeff's ear off for like 5 or 6 hours. And that to me was like one of the funniest moments that I've seen on Survivor. And I just love that. And then I also love, I mean, look, I'm not necessarily picking these moments based off of like strategic gameplay or anything, but they're just ones that really stuck out to me that I'm thinking of right now. But another one was Ty, who's like also one of my favorite players, with his chicken, because I love animals. And so Ty, like having his little chicken as his like best friend, bringing it to tribal council is so hilarious to me. And so those are just moments that really stood out to me that I just love.
What's one life experience you feel has prepared you most for the game?
If I'm allowed to talk about it, I was actually supposed to be on season 41. You know, I went through the whole casting process in person, and I got picked to be on the season. And I was actually a week away from leaving in 2020 before the pandemic hit. And then once the pandemic hit and everything got shut down, you know, eventually they ended up reworking the cast, and I was taken off of it. And I didn't know if I was going to have another chance to play. And I actually had to like re-audition and send in another video, go through the whole process again to even get back my spot back here. And so going through that, like having my dream right there, like so close, and then having it like taken away, and having like, I mean, it really just like, it was a huge blow. It was devastating, but I knew that like I was meant to play this game, and that if I wanted to have that shot again, like I needed to heal from this. I needed to reframe my thinking, and I needed to get ready to like get my spot back on the show. And so having that experience, I think really like made me work 10 times harder. And it made me just make sure that I was way more prepared coming in the second time, because like when I got my spot back, I was like, this is my second chance. And like, I don't like, that is so rare to be able to get that opportunity again. And so I knew that like, I wanted to come into this game as prepared as I could possibly be. And just having my past and what happened and this like roller coaster ride for the last 3 years, that really like, I think prepared me the most for, you know, going and playing on the show now in this time of my life.
Potato. Mike, do we have any sense of, at this point, what the March 2020 version of the Survivor 41 cast look like based off of the interviews we've done?
We have about, I think, a third of them nailed down. So I know, and people can correct me if there are any additional ones, but I know that Deshawn and Erica were going to be on. I believe that Tori and Zach were going to be on as well. And now Cassidy, spoiler alert, Cassidy will be the only person in this set of interviews, in these interviews in general this season, who will mention that they were supposed to be on Survivor 41. Maybe that was the case with some of these other people and they neglected to mention it for fear of like, I don't know, getting in trouble. I know that Janine, I think, allegedly was a alternate for either like 41 or 42. But yeah, Rob, this might be the makings of an eventual Brain Steel season, the biggest Survivor what if ever.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know. And I guess, you know, how many people will we see in the future? How many people like got cut and they like missed their shot and they are never going to be on the show? Like, I think it's really interesting.
Yeah. What's also interesting is of all those names I listed off, they all are playing on blue tribes over the course of this season.
Oh, that's how they let us know.
Yeah, that's the little like at home, you know, mole-esque clue of, okay, well, the people on blue tribes, they were the ones that were supposed to be, and they were feeling really blue in 2020, but now they're getting a second chance to come back. Do you think she should have had to reapply? I've seen a little bit of stuff about this, about like whether they should have, when they were starting things back up, just like go back immediately to the 18 people that they had already picked and ask them to come back? Or do you think they should have made them re-audition like they did with Cassidy?
I mean, I think re-auditioning is tough. I can understand that they want to sort of like rejigger like what they have, but this does seem like a little extreme, unless they like radically change the like I know they did a radical change of like what they were looking for in a CBS reality cast, but I feel like that the actual process of applying is the same.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we'll hear from some of those other people who are listening to this as to like whether they also had to re-audition. Maybe Cassidy had also just gone through some life changes as well. Like
Yeah.
I know, like if someone applies in season 2 and then you get accepted for like season 18, I know the casting usually contacts you, right? And it's like, hey, can you like resend a
Yeah.
video just so we can like get a better sense as to who you are now?
The only thing I can think of is that her story sounds like that she went to an open call and that maybe they were doing the casting. Maybe there is no open call anymore, and that they
Hmm.
are now only seeing people like who send in a like video in the traditional means. And so maybe she needed to submit via like the video submission as opposed to the open call audition.
What do you think about her sort of approaching this as a quote unquote second chance, even though it is actually a first chance, just a second attempt at it?
Yeah. Well, Jeff always says like play like it's your second time.
Yeah, and I think she truly does have that attitude, which might work for or against the fact that people are also playing for the first time. I also want to flag the fact that one of the moments she does mention as her favorite is indeed the saga of Ty and Mark the Chicken. Rob, early favorite for the Sia Award now, based on Cassidy's answer?
I don't know. I think that Sia has kind of changed her rubric of what she's looking for. I do not think that having some sort of like kindness to animals is necessarily like what she's going for. I'm trying to think of the last person she gave money to that was like a big part of their story.
Yeah, I mean, that was so 2016, right? You try to copy Ty. I guess that's the thing is that you can't mimic previous SIA recipients. It's just like being a Survivor winner, right? You can't play like a previous winner because that's only not inherently yourself. It'll allow you to be clocked early by other people. You truly have to just be yourself and hope that that catches the veiled eyes of one SIA to get the money in the end.
Yeah. I mean, Sia, she wants you to entertain her. And she's looking for, if people had like some sort of like traumatic experience. Those seems like the two things that she's going for these days.
Well, I mean, Cassie does have that tragedy, as she mentions, and Survivor being a constant for her to get through things like her parents' divorce, losing her sister to addiction. What I do find interesting, Rob, is that someone we'll talk about not this time, but next time, also has a family history with loss through addiction. And I do wonder if we get into a merge scenario where they both are there, that is something much like we saw with Shannon and Liana, right? Who like meet each other because of their shared backgrounds, instantly form this really, really close bond. If
Mhm.
that is something that could be brewing on the horizon, should these two people make it to a merge scenario?
Yeah, we will have to see. All right, let's get back to Cassidy.
What excites you the most about the new era of Survivor?
Ooh, it's interesting because, I mean, now it seems nothing comes without a price attached. And so, in the past, people used to be able to like rely on finding immunity idols and things like that to save themselves in the game. But now, like, there are risks associated with everything. If you find an idol, it's like a beware advantage. You lose your vote, which is so crucial in especially the early stage of the game, and especially on a smaller tribe. So, I mean, it's interesting. It's a little scary as well, but it's also exciting, and just knowing that the game is constantly changing and it's kind of refreshed every season, it really allows you to like go into it and be surprised and be excited. And I'm pumped up for that, and this fast gameplay. I think I'm a player who can really, adapt and, be extremely flexible in this type of environment. And so going into like a fast paced game, like I feel really ready for that. And yeah, I'm just excited to see what happens.
What do you think people will perceive you as?
So I think that just because of my personality, like I'm a very bubbly, like warm person. I like to make jokes. I like to just like have a good time. But I also have a serious side to me, and I think I'm intelligent. I hope so. I don't want to toot my own horn, but I just really feel like I'm a really well-rounded person as far as like social skills. intelligence and, my physical strength, I really trained hard to be here. But I think just from my outer appearance and my personality, people may not really perceive those things about me as much. And that is something that I plan to use to my advantage, because when you're in under a big spotlight all the time and people see you as a major threat from the beginning, it's really hard to play a good game from that place. So going in and being underestimated is actually what I hope happens, because then I'll be able to pull the strings from the shadows and puppet these bigger moves without, so much detection or eyes on me. And so I really hope, honestly, that they underestimate me, because then they won't know it's coming.
What type of player are you looking for in an alliance?
I do want somebody that I connect deeply with. I think that is really important in an ally, because having that initial bond, I think really kind of steers people more towards being loyal rather than being, disloyal towards you. So I really want to find genuine connection with somebody. I want somebody who is not going to make super rash, decisions, who's not just going to be trying to do a million things at once, talk to a million people. I want somebody who is able to step back and really take calculated risks and think things through before. And I want somebody who will work with me throughout every stage and who will, come to me about any decision instead of, making moves behind my back. Obviously, that's really important. And I honestly really hope to find somebody early in the game that I can play a good portion of the game with. I think that having that ally is really beneficial in the game. So
what's the one thing you told yourself you wouldn't do in this game?
Let's see. There's a couple things, but I think that one thing I told myself that I would not do is going into it. I think it's really important to make forge relationships and build alliances really quickly. I think people make the mistake of going in and just waiting until immunity or until you lose immunity and you're going to tribal council to really start making plans and doing all that. But I think it's so important to go in and make as many connections as you can from the get-go. So I told myself going in, I was not gonna sit back and wait around for somebody to come up to me and to try to make alliance with me. I was going to go to each and every single person, talk to them, find some sort of connection, and really be able to decide and have as much information as I can about these people to make my decision about who I want to be in an alliance with. And honestly, just saying yes to everybody at the beginning anyways, and then I can kind of figure out from there where I want to go. But I also don't want to go in immediately going out by myself or looking for idols or looking sketchy. I really want to look as though I'm kind of taking it a little slower, but socially I won't be.
Okay,
and that
Mike.
is Cassidy.
That's Cassidy. Interesting. I think we got a lot about why she got into Survivor, why Survivor is important to her. I feel like that we didn't really get into what type of player she's going to be until right at the end. She wants to be, she's hoping to be underestimated. She's planning to be social. It sounds like she doesn't want to make a lot of waves in the first half of the game, and then is hoping to be somebody who can sort of emerge later on in the game. Although that being said, in the new era of Survivor, that's kind of been the blueprint for a victory.
Right. It's this idea of the two winner stories we've essentially had so far, right, is don't go to tribal council a lot, if at all, in the pre-merge, and then post-merge, allow all the big threats to take each other out. You make the one or two calculated moves that you need to in the middle merge to set yourself up well for the end game, and then sweep it up at the end. And so if Cassidy is able to continue on to that, she seems, from what she outlined, it seems like she's very clinical right now with how she intends to do things. No, I will say, I think she has a good head for what's happening. The one thing that does stick out to me is in that last intro you mentioned, she said, I'm not going to sit back and wait for somebody to come up to me and start making alliances. Now, that is all well and good. I can understand, the lack of passiveness there. But I also think there's a difference between that and being full Zayn Knight, hey, you're in my alliance, you're in my alliance, you're in my alliance. I don't think she's vocalizing that, but I could also see a possible universe where she's all right, got to hit the ground running, got to start making connections. And in these new era where tribes are so small and so transparent, people can really easily see that. And if they clock it as something that isn't authentic, that is something that I feel could put her in trouble.
Yeah. Mike, what else from her bio did you think was interesting?
Yeah, so Cassie mentions like her physicality, despite being a smaller
Okay.
woman. In her favorite hobby, she does talk about how she likes skating and boxing. And
Oh,
she says, why do you think you can be the sole survivor? I think I've got the sweet spot in all the right places. I'm physically fit and competitive. I will be an asset to my tribe, but my smaller stature will make me appear non-threatening. And so, listen, I don't want to use the P word, but Parvati did once upon a time. I think her
okay.
first season, right?
Okay.
Ready to give this podcast an explicit rating. Yeah, I
Yeah.
believe Parvati in Cook Islands, right? Was she not like charity boxer was her career?
I don't think it was charity boxing. I think it was some other. It was like fitness boxing or model boxing. I think it was.
Model boxing, yeah. So maybe Cassie will that will prove to be a model way to play this game. So like she certainly has
Which I
that
think
that fit.
Parvati has said, like, I think I did that one time. They just like they go for like the most salacious job title they could give you.
Well, at least Cassidy at this part is like actively pursuing it as a hobby, which means that she does have that amount of cardio that could help in some of these challenges. Where
Yeah.
even if Coco does end up going to these tribal council or to a lot of these tribal councils, if she is not sticking out from like a strategic or a social perspective, I could see her as okay, we've got to keep her around. We've got to make sure that like she's helping us in the challenges right now because she could be one of the only hopes that we have considering her physical background.
Okay. Anything else
Another
on?
thing,
Good.
yeah, another thing I want to bring up. So Cassidy is very spiritual. She is
Oh.
all about this idea of manifesting. She says she is super in tune with the universe, with the energy, and how other people might not believe in this idea of putting something out there, but she wants to. But perhaps, Rob, to talk a bit about her mischievousness that she was sort of hinting at under the behind the scenes. She says she does the whole Kim Spradlin routine on herself. Her spirit animal is the fox.
Okay. All right. So Eddie Fox.
Could be. Is she going to open a chicken bar in honor of her favorite player, Tai Trang?
Yeah. Okay. If she's the sly fox, that'll be good for her this season.
Yeah, that's what she said. She basically says, like, she's clever. She can kind of sneak her way around. Have you ever given any thought to what your spirit animal is?
Not once.
Really? I feel like that's like a go-to question that people ask just in general to, I don't know, pass the time in conversations.
Normally, I like things like that, but like, what animal am I like? None.
I think I'd be a goose.
So what about the goose, Mike? What do you see in the goose?
Everything.
Mm-hmm.
Just everything goose I see in myself. I look in a mirror, I see a goose.
Wow. Okay.
So
We should explore that sometime. Yeah.
And we'll see. Well, it's interesting that Cassidy says that she fancies herself the fox, considering how much she loves Ty and Mark the chicken. Foxes, memorably when they get
Fox
in the hen
house.
Yeah, usually not a good story. So maybe that CM money is not guaranteed.
Probably not. Okay. Mike, anything else on Cassidy?
No, I think that she is someone who is willing to like surrender herself to the moment, like we said before, treating this as a second chance. Well, I think we'll put a pin in her, a bobby pin, perhaps, considering her fashion career.
Sure.
See, based on the rest of this tribe, how she'll fit in. But I think my initial impression is I do think she is someone that could do what she's talking about of like riding the pre-merge as like a very solid person in the challenges, someone who is working a lot of connections, though not overtly, and then is able to find her opportune moments playing rather aggressively in the post-merge. Again, you talked about that winner blueprint with Erica and Marianne. If there is, I think, one person for me in this cast who could fit that mold, it may be Cassidy for me.
I could see it. All right. Mike, who's up next?
Up next, Geo Bustamante. Geo is 36 years old. He currently lives in Honolulu, Hawaii, but he was born in Peru, raised in Miami. He is or was a project manager. We'll talk more about that in the interview. I will say that Geo is the shortest interview we have of the season, pun unintended, because he will also talk about his height as well over the course of this interview. But I think there's a lot of good stuff packed into this little 5-minute package.
Okay. All right. Here is Gio.
To start off, tell us about yourself. Give us your name, age, and occupation.
My name is Geo Bustamante. I'm 25 years. Wait, do I have to say my real age? Or I'm 35 years old, and I'm a account manager for a telecommunications company. Well, was an account manager for a telecommunications company. Unfortunately, because I didn't have enough days to request off, I had to resign from my job to be here. I was born in Peru, and I'm a military spouse, so I'm a gay Latino immigrant. And I'm here to play the game, you know, to give everything I have and leave everything on the field to win, because I don't have a choice now.
Why are you here on Survivor?
Yes.
Yeah, I told you, again, a lot packed into, you know, a few questions. A lot to dissect here with Gio. Let's start with the fact that he aged himself down more than a decade when asked to describe himself.
Oh, so he's not actually 25?
He's 36.
Oh. Was he joking?
I
Is that
can't
Geo
tell.
humor? Is he a prankster?
I could see he has a little bit of, like, again, maybe he's a little bit foxy as well.
He could have fooled me. Looking at his photo.
Yeah, but is that too much of a jump to age yourself down an entire decade? Do you want to go with like 5 at most when you're asked to lie about your age?
I mean, look, go big or go home, Mike.
I mean,
what's the point of like changing a year or two?
Well, he's go big or go home is very much his philosophy here, right? Because the other thing to speak about from that first answer is the fact he does not have a job to go home to.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is a surprisingly rare case when it comes to Survivor, but I think it's something that should be oftentimes stated. You talk about this a lot when you speak with previous castaways on Talking with T-Bird. Like, when it comes to returnee seasons, there's a lot of questions of like, why wasn't this person asked? Why did this person not say yes? It is very tough to ask a job today. Yeah, I'm going to take like a month and a half off to go play a reality.
It's never
TV
been
show.
easier. The jobs are like, hey, okay, you'll come back. Like, okay, I guess do what you want.
Well, I think that depends, right? If you're working at like, if you're working at like a McDonald's, maybe where like the, you know, they're very much in demand for talent, but still, it's a tough thing to do to ask for like a full month and a half, including like the 39 days plus the quarantine plus the post game stuff. Maybe it's also an idea that there's so much reality TV out there that it's become more of sort of like, okay, you get 3 vacation days, 4 6 days, and you get like 6 reality TV days.
Wow.
You can just film whatever show that you need to do.
Well, look, it's nice to see that some of these companies are changing their benefit structure to include reality TV days for people.
Yeah, I am married to an HR director. I should really ask her to include that. You know, it's like, speak to the culture nowadays. How many people in your company do have a desire to go on reality TV, and how many more would want to do so if you made that an option? But yeah, Gio's very upfront about how he doesn't necessarily have a job to go back to. We saw this in a very recent season of Survivor South Africa as well. I think it makes you look at the game a different way, because while there is this idea of leave it all on the field, I think there is this addition of stakes of what the hell do I have to go
This
back
is my
to?
only income. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Like, I gotta get the paycheck. It's the only option at this point.
Yeah. Burn the bridges behind you. Quit your job before Survivor.
Exactly. That way you have nothing to go back to, and it'll make you play that much harder.
That's right. Okay. Let's go back to Gio.
I don't have a choice now.
Why are you here on Survivor?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so I watch every single episode of Survivor. I analyze the whole entire game.
Okay.
And Survivor, you know, actually I've learned so much. It made me to be the person that I am today, because, you know, I grew up with all these insecurities, being gay, being Latino, having an accent. You grew up with all these insecurities, thinking that, you know, the world looks at you on a certain way, or people laugh at you because you say things in a certain way. But Survivor is it's a place where you can be who you want to be, who you are, who you truly are. And you can still shine, you can still win, you can still be the little people and be and shine as bright as the strongest person in the show. So I think that's why I love Survivor. It's like life, but in a show, condensed into a little thing, into a little bottle that makes an amazing, show, competition.
Why? Potato. What do you think is the new tagline for Survivor? Survivor, it's like life, but condensed into a show.
I was going to say into a little bottle. I was going to say throwback to Cook Islands once more with the infamous bottle twist.
Yep. You'll lose Jenny Guzan Bay. Yeah.
Oh, day Survivor. Though I think if people want a Survivor smell, that probably is not the thing you want to ideally spray around.
Not ideal. Okay. All right. Back to Gio.
Why are you here on Survivor?
Honestly, if somebody would have told me, hey, 10 years ago, you should go and apply to be on Survivor, I would have said, hell no, you're crazy. Because I was too shy back then. I had too many insecurities. But now, especially after the pandemic, I've learned so much. I've learned that you gotta do what you gotta do now, today. If you like something, forget about being shy, forget about being nervous, forget about your insecurities. Just go for it. Just live your life and be happy. Do whatever makes you happy. And I decided to take my shot and apply for Survivor because of that. So yeah, I'm still a little nervous every now and then, but I'm overcoming everything I'm overcoming all of my insecurities, basically, being here.
Give me one Survivor winner and one non-winner who you identify with the most.
Oh, yes. Actually, I identify with a few, but okay, so I'm a small guy. I'm only 5'7". I think that Cochran will be one of them because he was also a very, at the beginning of the show, he was, he wasn't the strongest person. But he was very smart. And I think I'm very strategic because I have a lot of street smart in me. That will be one of them. I can identify with Boston Rob as well because he's very strategic. He's very cutthroat. I don't think I'll be as cutthroat as him, but I'm very strategic as well. And I'm always thinking and analyzing and planning what's my next move in the real world, I know you said two, but I have to say Sandra because I love Sandra. I know she's someone that a lot of people don't like her, but I like how direct she is. Like, she's a very strong woman. She's like the type of person that, yeah, she knows she's probably bad at challenges, but she's there and she's going to let you know that, hey, I'm here to win. And she's the queen and she remains the queen.
What's your
potato? Yeah. Gio did not get the assignment, I don't think.
I mean, technically speaking, Boston Rob and Sandra and Cochran have all been voted out, so they technically were non-winners at some point.
I think he thought you said to give me two winners that you identify with.
That'd be an odd exercise as well.
It would be weird because he said you only wanted two, but I'm going to give you a third. And he also said that I know a lot of people don't like Sandra. I mean, where's he getting that information?
I think he's just going onto the Survivor Facebook pages during Winners at War when people were complaining about Sandra sitting out of challenges. Yeah, I agree. A little bit of an odd tapping into the vein. The mention of Cochran Rob, I think, is interesting. It did make me think about some things because Gio talked about, and I can understand now why he said Cochran, because he spoke a lot, right, about how the show taught him that insecurities can actually be a weapon to utilize rather than a shield, and that, like, winning as who you are is oftentimes the best thing to do. And it's interesting thinking about this in the fact that he didn't even see Marianne win, but I think she is probably the most recent example of this idea of, like, authenticity through your weirdness, warts and all. But it makes me realize, is Marianne the new Cochran?
In a lot of ways, I think, yes. I feel like that she's serves like that archetype of, like, super fan, comes in, a lot of energy, people got irritated with both of them early on. And so, I mean, I definitely could see similarities.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. We'll see, Jeff was definitely on the Cochran train, even though he gave Cochran a ride himself one day. Definitely early on. I don't know if that's what he'll do with Marianne, but I agree with you with their own respective journeys. Now, for Cochran, it was over 2 seasons. For Marianne, it was only 1, but are alarmingly similar. And again, for 43, it's not really going to happen because they had only seen about half of season 42. But I do wonder when we do this exercise for 44, like how many times someone like Marianne is going to be referenced, because she is one of the first winners in a while I can really think of, outside of maybe a Tony, of, okay, wackadoo kind of wild personality, but is able to shine, in fact, because of it, not in spite of it, and do well in the game.
Yeah. Most of the Survivor winners are not big personalities. That's why it took 40 seasons before they could do an all-winner season.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that, you know, much like Cochran sort of popped back then for, I think, before Adam Klein being the sort of prototype super duper nerd ending up winning the show that he cares so passionately about, I think that Marianne could represent that for the new era as well.
Okay. All right. Here is the rest of Gio's interview.
What's your favorite moment in Survivor history?
Actually, I think my favorite moment was a blind side.
Okay.
With his name was Eric, if I'm not wrong, when he gave up his immunity necklace to someone else, and he ended up getting eliminated on the spot. That was one of my favorite moments, because I love blind sides. I love things that impact the game, that makes people want to say, wow, you know, I wanna watch the next season. I want to watch the next episode. So I'm hoping to do the same thing, hopefully, as you know, not something as dumb as him, but something crazy and good, you know, that makes me win.
Is there anything else you want to mention about yourself before you begin the adventure of a lifetime?
Just remember, Geo Bustamante, I don't come to play, I come to slay.
Yes.
There you go. Now, he mentioned Sandra. She was slayed, so hopefully he's able to avenge the fallen men in that regard against all the people that hated her.
He doesn't come to play. He comes to slay. Okay. Did you get a sense for what type of player Gio is going to be?
Fantastic question. Not really. I want to pull one quote from his 1-minute video that may be able to have us ascertain something. I want to play the game hard until someone says, listen, you're playing too hard. He basically says he would rather tone it down than not do enough and have regrets afterwards. So I think if I could discern something from Gio, and even a bit from that little short interview that we had, I think he is somebody that really is looking to like hit the ground running, start doing things, start making moves, because again, he has nothing to lose. He has everything to gain. And I think he wants to be able to capitalize on every single second he has out there.
Okay. What else did you take away from Gio's bio?
So what is the accomplishment you are most proud of? Being that English is my second language, I grew up in the hood and was homeless for a period of time. The accomplishment that I am most proud of is graduating with my associate's degree with a 4.0 GPA, which is awesome. I think we'll talk about somebody actually coming up in a couple of people who also comes from a similar background of growing up in a lower income household and working their way up from there. So that could actually be like a really good connection that Gio could make here. What is something we would never know from looking at you? I grew up shy, quiet, and in my head, which made me a thinker and very analytical. People also don't see if they mess or compete with me, they will lose. A whole new alter ego comes out that turns into a beast during any competition.
Wow. Okay.
Yes.
It's got like a Hulk side.
That could be. It's interesting, right? Because Gio is on the shorter side, so we could see him like literally grow 2 feet and just absolutely Hulk out in some of these challenges. Bustamante out of those clothes.
Yep, I could see it.
Yeah, so Gio, I really don't know what to make of him, if I'm being completely honest. Maybe it's just because there's so little to go off of, even after combing through everything that we know about him. It seems like he wants to really quickly play the game. That's not something to completely write him off as a pre-merge boot. It can certainly be something that gets him in trouble, but we do see people that hustle early on sometimes end up setting up well for themselves, especially if Coco doesn't end up going to those first couple tribal councils. Again, look at someone like Drea, who was really running that Ika tribe and was probably hustling the most and ends up in one of the more well-connected positions at the merge. I think if Gio is able to like evade at the right times and able to get the right yes people like a Cassidy, perhaps, I think he could do well. But then I could also see a world where like he is going way too hard, way too fast out of the game, much like someone like Boston Rob, right? Who like can only really play one way. And there's a reason why he got voted out, you know, pre-jury 3 times.
Yeah, I could see a similar situation. Like I could see him going off for an advantage, or like getting the beware advantage, and then not having a vote, and then ending up like doing something hasty where he ends up being in a bad spot early on and tough to come back from that. So yeah, I'm not feeling great about Geo.
Yeah, if I could compare him to another 42 Castaway, I feel like he has like Chanel vibes to me, right? Like where Chanel was someone who was very gamey, was very analytical, but was also doing all these bing bang boom things, right? Most memorably when she ends up risking her vote despite the fact that she
Yeah.
knew there was going to be this like 4-2 split happening, and then it causes this big unprecedented tribal council. I think you bring up a really good point that with this plethora of advantages, I could see Gio absolutely going for broke. And he better hope he gets something, because I would imagine that puts a target on his back. Though, again, there might be larger targets. I could see a world where he ends up making it to the merge, and then like with his shorter size, he's someone who could end up making it far into the game. But I could also see an environment where Coco's going to their first tribal council. They're like, this dude Gio has run us up the wall and then some. I don't care what advantage he might have. Let's just all gang up on him.
Yeah, I don't think that he knows the show like particularly well based off of his interview. So I think that he might be a little bit like just like maybe in over his head with like jumping into the new era of Survivor, but he's the kind of person who sort of maybe like might look or leap before he looks. And I think that he could potentially end up in a bad situation early on, but maybe he ends up in a good landing spot.
Yeah, this could be a thing where sometimes people who do hustle early on and get the advantages have that sort of power, right? Look what would happen with Mike, for example, where for various reasons, yes, he lost his vote, he lost his closest ally in Jenny, but like because of the idol, I think people rallied around him to a certain extent. And if Gio is able to like find his tribe's idol, as an example, that is something he could use to weaponize / unify the entire group around him, being like, listen, if you vote me out, I have the only idol on our tribe. And so do you really want to give away that power?
Okay. Mike, anything else about Geo?
No, I will say, 5'7". I don't know, Rob, you're the one who's played Survivor over me. Is that a below average height for Survivor men?
I mean, maybe for Survivor men, because I feel like that they tend to like you get a lot of like athletes and stuff like that. But I mean, I feel like that's not like way noticeable that is going to be like a big issue.
Yeah, that's my thing. I would say the main takeaway I have from meeting Survivor contestants, the privilege that I've had to do so over the years, is that I'd say about 80% of you are taller than you may think. There are the other ones I
Taller
think
than
are,
you think. Okay.
yeah,
I feel like that the camera always makes people look like gigantic, and then they're not as big as you think in person.
it really depends. Like Steven Fishback, for example, is a
Sure.
freaking maypole
Hmm.
comparatively to like what you may think. But I think the 20s are shorter than you probably may think. Dom and Wendell were such a formidable duo for many reasons, and the ways that they sort of like filled in each other's holes, including from a height perspective. I didn't realize until we went to the Ghost Island finale, Rob, like how much of a difference there was between them in terms of height.
Hmm. Yeah. It's hard to tell. I also find that Big Brother players tend to be taller than you think. The camera sort of like makes
Mm.
everybody seem like smaller.
Yeah, well, everyone's also lying down in Big Brother usually, so it's
Mhm.
tough to like gauge heights when they're just,
Sure.
splayed out on the bed the entire time.
Sure. Mike, are we ready for our next person?
Yes, let's finish off the front half of the Coco tribe. We are moving on to James. James Jones. He is 37 years old, from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. He is an event planner, though something that should be noted. It's talked about a lot in his bio, in his 1-minute video. Not mentioned a lot in his interview. He is sort of like a chess prodigy, with competed in
Oh,
tournaments at a young age. So we shall see how much that translates to. Listen, unlike the squares of a chessboard, the game of Survivor is far from black and white.
okay. All right. Let's go and see what James has to say. Here is James.
To start off, tell us about yourself. Give us your name, age, and occupation.
My name is James Jones. I am 36, and I'm an event curator and real estate investor from Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
Why are you here on Survivor?
I really want to, I want to use my ability to communicate with people. And if I can, be as good of a Survivor player as I think I can be. So I'm here to challenge myself mentally, physically, and emotionally, and, see if I can really, get this thing going and really be the best person I can be.
What's your history with watching Survivor?
So I remember watching it the first season, and then I really remember watching it when Earl won his season. And I remember watching that season and thinking it was like masterful how he was just manipulating, kind of not manipulating everybody, but he was being a genuine person, but at the same time getting people to see things his way. And him also being like an African-American male was kind of something that, I don't remember ever seeing an African-American male winning before Earl. So that was kind of inspirational for me growing up, and just being able to see someone go out, conquer the elements, and be able to win $1 million, help their family out. So I feel like that was, my start. And then as the game progressed, like all the strategy components about the game and interpersonal relationships really just kind of stuck to me because I grew up playing chess. So just thinking about strategically kind of how to balance that with the personal interaction relations with people. And you sit back and think, how do you get voted out with 2 idols in your pocket? How do you not see this coming? And like, if I was out there, I would be doing this and that, and then I'll get the opportunity. So I was always wanted to know, like, what would I really do? Could I really conquer the elements? How would I be not sleeping, not eating? And I wanted to challenge myself and really just think I can really do this thing. So I'm just excited.
Give me one Survivor winner and one non-winner who you identify with the most.
All right, the Survivor winner I identify the most with, I would probably say would have to be I would go with I would probably stay with Earl. I feel like he was very even killed. He kept everything. He never got too high. He never got too low. But you could always tell his mind was always working. And I feel like that's me, where I try to keep everything light, good vibes only, keep every smile on everybody's face. But in the back of my mind, I'm like a killer. I'm thinking about all the moves. I'm thinking about how I can move myself forward and move the game forward. And the person that I feel like, that hasn't won, that's the best, is probably Cherie, because she didn't have the physical tools. And I don't think I'll be a physical player out here, but mentally be able to know when people are making moves and have that EQ and understand and read the room is just amazing to, be able to get that far and not be able to, have any, like, not be a physical threat and not be a beast in challenges and not be able to do a lot of things, but to be able to use your mind and your mouth and your words to get you far, I think is masterful. So those are the 2 people that I look up to in the game. And she's also an African-American woman too. So more power to the queen.
Potato. Ooh, a little bit of shots fired. James calling Cherie the queen. Or is this like Westeros where there are multiple queens happening?
I think maybe multiple queens happening. Yeah. So I like a lot of what James is saying so far. I feel like that he's seems to be focused more on the people and the other players in the game. He talks about how Earl won in Survivor Fiji. He talks about how Cherie was able to really end up playing a masterful game using her mind and really being focused on like the emotions of the other players and EQ. And so I think that James is saying a lot of the things that I like.
Yeah, I think that James, and maybe this is like the chess part of him, right? Like, we haven't had this much chess talk since back during the days of Spencer, and then before him, his future counterpart in Marty, right, with the Guillermo Villas stuff. But I like the way that James vocalizes, and he does this a lot in his 1-minute video, about bringing chess into Survivor where people aren't just pieces for you to use, right? Like, a bishop can only move diagonally. A Survivor player can't just move one way. In fact, they're going to move all over the place. And so it's more about the idea of reading your opponent than it is like strategically planning out moves. He talks a lot about how in chess and Survivor, you have to choose between certain points of adamantly pursuing strategies or like sitting back and letting people essentially make mistakes, which you can then capitalize on. And I think that's a really good way to contextualize the game of Survivor within something like chess, which is less about the pieces that you're using and more so reading the behaviors of your opponent. And yeah, listen, we stand an Earl Cole shout out in, the Lear of Our Lord 2022. And I think that the way James vocalized his game, I think is really great and really on the nose. I do think Earl may be one of the most underrated winners out there, especially given the fact that Earl was a recruit, did not know Survivor from A Hole in the Ground, which is probably another name of a reality show that was out at that time on Fox or something. Yet he was able to come in, much like James, read the people, read the situation in a game that he was not very much aware of, and then go ahead and win.
Mike, it's right here all along. This guy is James Earl Jones.
Oh my God! Right in front of us. You thought you could get past us, Mr. Cole, but no, 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 no. We read between it. We consulted the facts. We solved your puzzle, Mr. Policeman. We had all the clues. Earl, we see you. I know you couldn't come out to play your second time. This is your spiritual successor.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. The second coming of Earl is James Jones, of course.
Wow. And now a bunch of people I know online in a certain subsect just like absolutely fell in love with him with that comparison.
Yeah. Okay. And when he talks about Cirie as the queen, maybe he's talking about he's comparing her to the chessboard. Yeah,
that could be it as well. That Cirie was able to do a lot, right? Much like the queen can pretty much move anywhere at any point in time. What do you think the odds are, Rob, that we're going to get like a Tashawn from Big Brother Canada-esque chess confessional from him at one point of like, Gio's the pawn, Carla's the bishop, I'm the king, baby.
The producers of reality shows do love this stuff.
Yeah, they absolutely love the chess piece comparison. And considering James's history, like, they have to bank on it. We saw the file photos in his 1-minute video. I think we're going to get it here from his package if he gets one about, like, him being a chess champion. He talks about this in his bio. He won the U.S. Chess Open, the largest chess tournament in the USA, for his rating bracket when he was 12, and he won $1,200, which was like $100,000 to him at that age.
Okay, let's get back to James.
What's your favorite moment in Survivor history?
I remember when Parvati used 2 idols in Heroes Villains. I thought that was like a crazy, iconic moment because they went into that merge down 4-8, where they were down 4, and just understanding that using people's perceptions like against you and, manipulating people at the highest level. It's like when you're at the bottom and you can still get people out from the big alliance, I feel like that's always, masterful gameplay. Because it should be easy to take out the smaller alliance at the merge, and the ability to flip that and kind of shock people when you don't have the numbers is, I think, still like the most amazing thing to see in the game.
Potato. I think you might be getting Survivor Samoa and Heroes versus Villains confused, but great story nonetheless.
Yeah, I mean, listen, you see Russell in back-to-back seasons. Speaking of Russell, actually, let me invoke something going back to the previous players stuff. When asked in his bio, which past Survivor will you play the game most like? He says, Sandra's anyone but me will always be my strategy, as long as I see a path to the end and I am with people or have people in which I trust. If I don't have that, I will be an agent of chaos, Russell, with charm. I am playing to win and not for 7th place.
What do you mean, like Russell with charm? I got plenty of charm.
What do you mean you're playing to win? I tried to play that as well. Where's your hat, James? You need the hat if you want to be like me.
All right, let's go back to James.
What's one life experience you feel has prepared you most for the game?
I think when I was 17, I started school early, and I went to college in Florida A&M, and I'm from Philadelphia. So at 17, going 1,000 miles away to school and acclimating myself to a different environment around, campus 13,000 people, and being able to adapt and thrive there, where I joined the fraternity. I was active on campus, getting to know people from all across the country and excelling. And you're able to, I'm able to build people from the South, from the West, from the Midwest, people from out of the country that you meet, and being able to kind of deal with people and kind of excel socially and have a lot of fun and excel educationally down at school. It really shaped me and helped me to, professionally, where I worked at Goldman Sachs. I worked at Pfizer. I did really good internships, and I was around a diverse group of people, and knowing how to work those people and, not like work in a bad way, but build relationships and be able to communicate with different people on different levels to, you know, obtain different goals that I have. So those would be the things that shaped me. Also joining the fraternity while I was down there. Beta Nu taught me a lot about dealing with, you know, triumph and disaster, take the highs with the lows, and, you know, always keeping a cool head, but keep your mind going at the same time.
What excites you the most about the new era of Survivor?
What excites me is that my mind is always going 1,000 miles a minute. So I want the more stuff that gets thrown at it, the better for me. Like, I look forward to kind of using the twist and using what I know to kind of, you know, to make difference and kind of hopefully have moves that people will use in the future. Like, I want to find idols. I want to make fake idols. I want to try to, if I can get somebody to think they have an advantage and they don't have it. I want to have somebody think they lost their vote when they have it. If there's something that I can do with what the tools I'm given or this new Survivor, I want to try to push it to the limit, because that's what, you know, life's about. That's what this game is about. It's about pushing it to the limit, your physical limits, your emotional limits, your spiritual limits, and coming out on top.
Potato. What do you?
Yeah.
Yes. Let the hate flow through you.
Yeah. So it's, we're really bringing in all of our Star Wars, and it's a real mishmash right now.
Somehow Russell returned.
Yes, and James Earl Jones' voice. We'll need to bring him back to the light side. So, Mike, I like where James is coming from again. That, you know, okay, so he's gonna be thinking about the people first, and then with that, then he can then do sort of like the flashy stuff.
Yeah, I'm just intrigued as to, and probably he hasn't thought this plan through, but like, what does trying to trick somebody into the fact that they don't have a vote, not that you don't have a vote, that they don't have a vote, unless maybe I'm misreading that, but it seems like he wants to purposely make fake advantages to make people feel like they have something when they don't.
Yeah, it would be tricky of like, hey, I have some bad news. I went to Shipwheel Island and you don't have a vote tonight. Like,
yeah.
What?
Yeah, that's a little bit of a
when
tough
you
pill
get
to
to the tribal council, like, all right, Mike, it's your turn to vote. Actually, hold on. Or not.
Yeah, that's the thing, is that when people, you know, surrender their votes by finding idols, for example, or Shipwheel Island, like, I'm pretty sure, I'm trying to remember, when they walk up to the booth, did they have to write, like, no, they didn't write anything on the parchment, right? They just had to go up and
they go up there, and then it says, like, no vote on their paper, and they go sit down.
Right, because I know that, like, in the past, for example, like, I went to the first Tribal Council of Survivor 39, where Elizabeth Basil didn't have a vote. She actually had to manually write out no vote on her parchment. And I know that sometimes, for example, you have, like, a no vote parchment that you have to put that's already printed out, that you have to put within the urn. So it really depends. But you would imagine it comes out there, right? We're like, surely, and these are famous last words, but surely you can't trick someone into saying you don't have a vote, and they actually then accidentally abstain from voting.
I think James is just throwing spaghetti at the wall here in this pregame interview. Like, so I don't know if he might do exactly that, but he is like trying to think outside the box. If there's a way to do it, he'll figure it out.
I'm going to go back to the life experience question, because listen, I'll admit, sometimes you roll your eyes a bit when the answer is to like, what one life experience has prepared you the most for the game is going to college. This is what sort of, when we talk about the younger players, right? That we talked about this, I think, with Xander and with JD, a bit of like, okay, if your one life experience is high school or college, like that is very different from the real world. But remember, James is 37 years old. Near the age, more so near Gio's real age than Gio's fake age. And so from that capacity, let's also remember that he is an event planner. He talks about this in his bio, that like managing events at a club on Friday night, anything can happen. And so I do think that there are a lot of social skills that I think he is accurately talking up here, as opposed to what you might initially think of like, okay, the thing that most prepares you for the game is like going to college in Florida. Fantastic. I mean, Florida can compare us for a lot of life, just in terms of how anything and everything will happen in terms of weirdness. Florida really is the new era of states in terms of Survivor.
I guess so. They could have shot a season there during the pandemic.
Yeah, exactly. Just like the monsters
worked for WWE.
Now.
Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So yeah, I think that James is maybe almost like undervaluing himself when it comes to his social game, in my opinion.
Okay. Let's go to James some more.
What do you think people will perceive you as?
So this is, I feel like this is the ultimate question. I feel like people are going to really perceive me as a fun-loving person that isn't really too serious at first. And I want to keep them thinking that. But then I don't think they're going to perceive me. I'm an older person here, but I don't think I look old. So I want older people here. And I want them to think that I'm a laid-back, steady force. But behind that steady force, the laughs and the jokes is going to be someone that's going to cut their throat at tribal the second I get a whip they're trying to come at me. So I want to present, I want to be perceived as someone that's a steady force, a hard worker, and that there's not going to be, I'm not going to shake things up. So they want to keep me around. But that's what I want them to perceive. And that's what I've been trying to do. And that's how I'm going to present myself. And hopefully I'll be good at that. And I can rule them out when I can.
What type of player are you looking for in an alliance?
I want to find my opposites. I feel like, I feel like you always have like the cool kids, and then you have like the big alliance, and then you have like the people who are, on the outskirts. I want to, find people who are opposite of me, So if I'm older, I want to find people that are younger, not where I'm from, like have different experiences. One, because I want to reach out and I want to learn. Because the more you learn about people and their experiences, the more you're able to judge their actions. So I want to be able to build with people who aren't like me, because those are going to be the hardest people to build relationships with. And the people that are more like me, I feel like that would be more natural for them to communicate with me. And it may be harder for them to communicate with people that aren't like them. So when they're not building relationships, I want to build relationships where people aren't going to build relationships, but do it in a way where I can get all the information and also have an army or have different moves at my disposal and different options moving forward. So my goal is to keep the people that are like me around me, but make sure I build relationships with people that are opposite me socially, physically, and temperamentally.
What's the one thing you told yourself you wouldn't do in this game?
Well, I didn't have that talk. But I think I'm not gonna. One thing I'm not gonna do is I'm gonna not be someone different. I have to be myself. I can't not be myself. And because when everything is stripped from you, you have no choice. And this game takes away everything. So I can't not be who I am. I'm a gregarious person. I tell jokes. I have a lot of energy. I have to be that person. And the second I'm not that person, someone's going to know that that's not me. They're going to be able to detect that. So you have to stay true to yourself. So I'm not going to not be me. So it's like either you're going to take it or you're going to leave it. And a lot of people like it and some people don't. And the people that don't got to go. It is what it is.
What's the best advice you received before coming out to play?
And actively listen. Listen and really engage with people on a human level. Like, yeah, we're playing the game, but, these are people. And this is a game about people. And make sure that you're vulnerable and show empathy. So I'm typically, growing up in Philly, like you keep everything close to the vest. You keep everything inside. And this is a game where you have to get people to trust you. And to do that, you have to be vulnerable. So, and my friends told me, James, it's okay to show some emotion. Like, you need to, kind of, not be as hard, not be as, don't be as, kind of hard to get to know. Don't have that wall up out here. Like, this is the one time in your life that you probably need to be vulnerable and let people invest themselves in you, and you invest in people. And, that's how you're going to win this game.
What celebrity or fictional character would you want to come out for a loved one's visit?
Making Good. I don't know. I had a crush on her since I was a kid. So, if that's a celebrity I can get, yeah. Or actually, yeah, it would probably be Making Good. But actually, no, it would be Diddy. Diddy, Puffy is like literally like my idol since I was a kid, since Can't Stop, Won't Stop. Like if I saw Diddy hop off the helicopter and he Diddy bopped out there and we had to do a challenge together, I don't know what I would do. That may be the one thing that would be better than winning the game. Truth be told, and you probably can see from my expression that I got super excited about that. So it would be Diddy. But loved one, like I hope I see my niece out there. And truth be told, my mom passed away. So if that was a choice, that's not possible. But I would love for her to see me come play this game, man. Like she would have like, oh my God, man. I would probably be the one time I would break down and cry. Like, if anything, that would be it. So I guess there were 3 people. Hope I try to talk a lot, as you can tell. That's why he told me to shut up, James. So yeah, that's what's up.
All right, James, let's bring out your hero, Diddy.
Diddy's just Diddy bopping like, all right, James, I'm going to need you to drop all these buckets of water into this giant barrel at the end to get the food. I'm just thinking about like the Making the Band-esque Herculean task that Diddy used to give out and how he probably create survivor challenges based on that.
Yeah. What's the relationship like between a fan and a celebrity, Diddy? Can you explain what that's like?
Is it like a Diddy or a daddy? How close are you to James right now? Like, truth be told, I don't know who this man is. You kidnapped me from my house and put me on this helicopter, and now I'm in Fiji. What are we doing right now?
Okay. But overall, I really have enjoyed everything that James is talking about. I feel like really good about James going into the game.
I'm of a couple minds about it because I do agree. I think that like a lot of what he's saying in terms of it being less about advantages and twists and hard strategy and more so about like personal relationships and flexibility is ideal for the new era. I'm just having a tough time connecting the idea to the execution. I'm looking at his last answer, for instance, when he says like, yeah, sorry, I tend to talk a lot. And I'm like, is this going to be your answer at every tribal council? This Diddy equivalent of just like going on and on and on about things? Could this be something where he talks a bit too much and gets his mouth in trouble as a result of it? That might be something that I could see potentially happening, where here's a guy who feels like he understands people, who feels like he understands behavioral movements based on chess, but then for whatever reason, it doesn't match up to the way the game plays out. Another bit of a red flag for me, Rob, is the best advice he received before coming out, which is that he usually has his walls up and isn't vulnerable. And if he's not able to open up to people out there as well and not ingratiate himself with other people that might be having a tough time out there, that could be something that makes him feel disconnected from the rest of his tribe. So like those are my concerns. But to your point, I think he's giving a lot of the subjectively correct right answers with a lot of these things.
Yeah, I mean, it is a concern. Maybe he could be like somebody who talks too much, but he also talks about actively listening. And I feel like that any concerns I feel like are outweighed by the things that I like. So overall, I am still feeling, dare I say, Megan good about where we go from here.
Yeah, we won't be saying I'll be missing you to James because he'll be there in the finale.
I hope not.
He'll be saying "shake your tail feather" to the chickens after he kills them. And
he'll be saying it's all about the Benjamins, baby.
And then Coach comes out like, "Yes, who invoked my name?"
Mike, who's next?
All right, next up we have Karla.
Yes.
Karla Cruz Godoy. At the time of recording this, Karla was the most recent interview that I put out there. Got a big pop, both in terms of the interview, as well as I know she popped a bit on the Survivor 43 preview that we saw at the end of Survivor 42. She had that very fun, candid moment where she's like, "What would I do to win this game? I don't think there's anything I wouldn't do to win this game."
She didn't have that conversation with herself either.
Exactly. But I do think Karla, as she'll talk about in our interview, has a really fantastic story of triumphing from the most arduous of circumstances, perhaps the economic equivalent of being down 4-8 at the merge and foing her way to the top into a really fantastic position, earning one of the most prestigious scholarships in the nation. And she's hoping that hard work and resilience will be able to also pay off on the beach as well.
Okay. All right. Here is Karla.
Why are you here on Survivor?
I'm here on Survivor, well, one, to obviously win, but I was tired of watching Survivor on TV. I was really just tired of saying, well, like, I would do this differently, or like, what if, this person did that? I wish I could be there. And I've just always been the type of person to just be like, if, go for it, like, do it. If that's something you want to do, then just do it. And so I kind of mustered up the courage and I was like, let me just apply. And I did, and here I am. But also I saw this lack of representation for queer women of color and Chicanas, Latinas in the show. And I was like, I need to be there, right? Like that was it. I was like, we need to change things up a bit. So that's why Survivor.
What's your history with watching Survivor?
Yes.
Yeah, so I love these answers for a number of reasons. First, this idea, right, that like, while the DEI, policies that have been instituted in the new era have been fantastic, there are some people that maybe still feel a bit underrepresented. Carla talked about, being a queer woman of color. She'll talk later about being a plus size woman as well, how that type isn't necessarily represented on the show. And so it really is, again, just an early indicator of this philosophy for her of just like, as she vocalized, if you don't like your position, change it. There's no one that can really institute change but you. But I also low-key love this between Carla and James and some other people before about how we talked about this with Roxroy last season about how some people, the reason why they play Survivor is that they're sitting on the couch being like, yeah, I'm sick of like Monday morning quarterbacking a bunch of other players of just like yelling at them to do this thing. I'm going to be the person to be yelled at now.
Yeah, I think in the case of Roxroy, I feel like that was he watching the show and then his wife said like, okay, you have to go do it now. Like I do?
Yeah, it was very much, they were watching a season 39 episode and he's like, oh, what are you doing? Come on. She's like, if you think you're so damn good at this game, why don't you go apply and see if you can actually do it? And so I do not think that it was necessarily that much of a mandate for Carla, but I still love this idea of you watch the show time in and time out, and it's less so about like, oh, I think I could be good for this, and more so like, I want to show these idiots how it's done and not be one of them.
Okay, let's go back to Carla.
Survivor.
What's your history with watching Survivor?
Yes, so I went to UC Berkeley for undergrad. And that is something that I'm going to try to keep on the DL because I know how sometimes the institutions that we go to can be used against us. But at Berkeley, I was taking an education class and I met one of my friends, Dane, and he came up to me and he was like, do you watch Survivor? And I think this was like in 2014, 2015. And I was like, no, because for me, my understanding, I just thought Survivor was like a white people show, like honestly. And I was like, no, I don't watch it. And he's like, girl, you need to watch it immediately because it's all like, he went to explain, but I think the one thing that got to me was like, people are manipulating each other and, they're really forming relationships and getting to know one another. But ultimately the people that you vote out, they vote to decide who the winner is. And so that hooked me and I started watching it with him and I got my wife into it. And then we would host watch parties. It got to the point where we would then play Survivor at a bar with our friends, and our friends hated us for that. And Survivor kind of has just followed me everywhere I've gone. So after Berkeley, I moved to Washington, D.C., where I did my master's and I taught there. And in my apartment building, I met neighbors who were obsessed with Survivor. And so we have watch parties. And I played gay kickball in D.C., and the people like the folks in the gay kickball league, they had their own like Survivor day where people won money. So like you'd apply to be a part of it. And so it has it's funny because it's kind of gone full circle. So now I live in New Jersey and I got hired for my new job in 2020. And the first thing I kind of told like this, they kind of put us together as a mentor. Well, not the first thing I said, but I overheard he was talking about Survivor. And I was like, wait, you watch Survivor? And now we have our weekly calls. It's called literally Chris and Carla Talk About Survivor. And at this point, it's, ingrained in my work, in my, personal life with my friends, and obviously with my wife. And we watch it like honestly every day. And we just jump from season to season. It doesn't matter if it's old school Survivor, like we're going to watch, or even Australian Survivor. We recently just got into that. So that's a little bit of my history.
Potato. Okay.
That's a little bit. Yeah, no, that's
a little bit.
A lot.
A little bit. Okay. I mean, first off, when is Survivor Day, Mike?
Well, I think Survivor Day. Yeah, I think we need listen, Biden, I think this is the main piece of legislation you need to accomplish. I mean,
she was in Washington, D.C., okay, when this happened, okay? So play Survivor at a bar? Where do I sign up?
Well, I think it's more so like, and I've seen people do this before, right? You get your friends together, you sit around a table, and it's like, okay, we're all going to vote each other out one at a time. Which, listen, it makes sense why it would be in a place that
winner gets left with the check. Joke's on you.
Exactly. It's the opposite of the winning funds. But I would imagine like it's good to do it in a place that readily supplies alcohol because I feel like people would need that after just like the bitterness and sadness they'd experience upon being voted out by their friends.
Wow.
But also imagine probably a little rowdy. I'm sure there's a lot of screaming back and forth that would take place at certain points of the night.
Mike, but what about this for a game at the dinner, at the bar? Okay. You all had your meals, your drinks. Okay. You vote people. You want to be voted out. Okay. And now, so we have a round of voting. Person who is last is left with the check. They have to pay the whole thing. So
that's interesting.
How good is your social game to get voted out, to be one of the people that gets taken off the hook?
So it's like everyone wants to be Aussie and South Pacific, right? It's like, send me to redemption, you know, get me out of there. That way I don't need to be left holding the check.
It's a different game, but an interesting one. But boy, yeah. All right. So Karla loves Survivor, watches it every day, Mike.
Yeah, which is interesting because she, like, from the way she vocalizes it, it has very much followed her throughout her life, but it's been entirely coincidental, right? Where, like, yes, she was initially brought into the show, but then, like, she happens to move to DC and she meets people that are obsessed with the show. She joins this kickball league that does this, like, LRG, you know, one-day game of Survivor. She moves to New Jersey, where her mentor happens to watch Survivor.
Are we sure Karla and Chris Talk About Survivor isn't a podcast already?
All right, let me check the Apple reviews. Yeah, maybe we could already get some introspection a la Ricard, right, into like what her strategy for the game might be like.
Yeah.
Where does that name, like, she says it's named something. Is that like their standing appointment on their Google calendar?
I think that's the literal name of the appointment on the calendar. Yeah.
I would imagine so, which is like a very fun idea of like a standing appointment to check in with your former work mentor about
better than what most of my meetings are on the calendar. Yeah.
Maybe should you change the podcast to like Rob and Blake Talk Survivor?
Yeah. All right. Should we hear more about what Karla has to say?
Absolutely. She has a voluminous history with Survivor in her various relationships, but how does that translate to the game? Let's see what she has to say about that.
Sure.
Give me one Survivor winner and one non-winner who you identify with the most.
Yes, perfect. So I'll start with a non-winner that I identify with. So Cirie Fields. I love her. And I feel like she's, you know, a favorite for a lot of people. But to me, I identify with her the most because, one, I'm a plus size woman, right? And it's really hard to see plus size women on Survivor. I think that's another, you know, it took a lot of guts for me to apply. I was really scared because the perception, right? Like, I don't want people to see me and be like, oh, this girl's weak. But hearing Cirie's story is very similar to my story in the sense that, you know, she got off the couch and I literally did the same thing. Because I was just tired. I was tired of watching people and I wanted to challenge myself. And so not only because of Cirie's story, but Cirie's social game, I'm a social butterfly. I can literally meet a stranger and then ask them to go to a bar and we'll drink. Like, that's the type of person I am. I love to have friends. I love to make friends and I love to get to know people. And I can dig a lot of information out of them by just being genuine and, you know, interested. So Cirie, I connect to in that way. And a winner, Tony. I think Tony's strategy, but also his ability to have fun is something that I relate to the most. You know, he wasn't afraid to turn people against each other, similar to Sandra, but he also wasn't afraid to start lies and start rumors. And I think he was just willing to go and, you know, build a shack, like, you know, a hiding shack to go and eavesdrop on people. Like, that's something that it'll be a little hard, but I'm going to be eavesdropping in a different way, hopefully. And he just has a confidence that I feel like I can emulate in a way, like I can mirror that. And maybe it's a cop thing. I don't know. Maybe it's a Jersey thing. But it just feels very, to me, I can relate to. Not that I'm a cop or from Jersey, but I live in Jersey. So yeah, a mix of Tony and Cirie.
What's your favorite?
Yeah.
A mix of Tony and Cirie.
I mean, I'd sign up for that. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, I'll have that on the menu personally. It's like what is it, like the McGangbang, like the burger and the chicken sandwich on top of each other. Like, yeah, mix it.
Is that
together.
what it's called?
Quite literally, I believe that's what it's called.
Oh my God! All right, but I like what's Karla is talking about. You know, she wants to do the strategy, but also have fun with it, not be a game bot.
No, and I think she is going to be one to watch from a personality perspective. And I really loved what she has to say about, like, her being a social butterfly. I think she's an educational project manager, has her master's in education. So I think dealing with people in the classroom, I think does allow you to just naturally be that social person. We saw it with Tommy Sheehan. We saw it to a certain extent with Ron Clark as well. Like, I actually think that's a fairly underrated position in terms of how occupational skills can apply to the game, where you have to be ready on the fly for anything, but also you have to be, like, able to get on the same level as so many different types of personalities and solve so many different types of problems. I think Carla's really underlining a lot of great stuff. Plus, hopefully she's able to create this quote unquote hiding shack that she loves so much from Tony.
Hiding shacks are great. Okay. All right. Back to Carla.
Mix of Tony and Suri.
What's your favorite moment in Survivor history?
The all women's alliance with Parv, and that Eric moment. That's my favorite moment, where they literally convinced this kid to give up his immunity so that they could get away with, going to the final 3, well, obviously, 4, and vote all the men out. I just thought it was so wise. It was like the epitome of what old school Survivor was, right? Like really, really using their social dominance in a way to get what they wanted. The women worked together well. And I think it's one of my favorites because, women, it sucks to say that it's so hard for, women to come together without people assuming that there's going to be an all girls alliance because of that exact moment. Right. So like, because that happened, it's a lot harder now to do that. But if I could do something similar, I would love to do that. That for me, that was just like a hooray moment.
What's one life experience you feel has prepared you most for the game?
When I talk about it's hard to say one life experience because my life, is super intersectional, but I think growing up, low income, I grew up in San Diego. My parents, immigrants of Mexico. And I was born here in the US, and not just watching, but, like struggling while growing up was tough. And it kind of built this resiliency in me that I feel, that I carry everywhere I go. And going from being, poor, and my parents worked a lot. So my grandparents raised me, and my parents didn't graduate from high school. My older brother didn't graduate from high school. It felt like the cards were stacked against me. But I wasn't going to give up that easily. And so I think I'm a critical thinker, but I'm also very introspective. And even at a young age, that seeing what was around me and seeing kind of like what was set up for me, I was like, nah, this is not going to happen. And so I kind of took it upon myself to do what I had to do to get out of the situation that I was born into. And so I think because of that, and just like, I was able to, I think to add to this, one really cool thing about me is that, like, I've worked so hard for everything that I have. In high school, I won the Bill and Melinda Gates Scholarship, Millennium Scholarship, which has allowed me to go and receive, my undergrad degree, my bachelor's, my master's, and if I wanted to, my doctorate for free. I have $0 in debt because of this scholarship. And it was because of all the hard work and goal setting and just like sheer will and determination to say, like, this is the situation I'm going to get out of, and I'm going to break that generational curse, and I'm going to make my ancestors proud. That ability to do that at 14 to 18 years old is what's going to best prepare me for Survivor. I know what struggle is, right? Like, I know what being hungry is like, and I know what it's like to play someone, whether it's lying to them, whether it's, making people feel good, because that's the life I've had to live early on. And then I'm able to code switch easily. Coming from San Diego, from City Heights, you learn to be tough, you learn how to protect yourself and stand up for yourself. But then going to institutions like UC Berkeley and Johns Hopkins, that's a totally different kind of community and environment you grew up in. you're mingling with future lawyers, you're mingling with future doctors. It's a totally different social game, if you say it. And so all of that put together, I think is going to help me win for sure.
All right. Like overall, I love the profile from Karla. I mean, I feel like that as a player, you know, she brings a lot to the table. Super smart, knows the game, very social, wants to have fun, excited to be there. All those things are good. The only thing that I think is a downside for her is that I feel like, and especially I think that these are sort of like emphasized in the 6-person tribes, is that I don't know necessarily like how she's going to fare in the challenges.
Yeah, but I would also say, we didn't talk about this a lot, but like James was someone who vocalized as well in my interview, right? He's like, I don't know if I'll be very good at the challenges. There's a reason why the two of them both compare themselves to Cerise. So like, I don't know if she would necessarily be served up. And we'll talk about our next two people as well, whether or not like she would be the first de facto boot here. I love Karla, not only based on her personality, which I think she's going to bring a lot to this season, but I think she has her head in a really, really good place. Honestly, Rob, she is giving me so many Shan vibes, where Shan was someone who had a career that was naturally about making social connections, similarly had this background, right, where she came from a more impoverished, lower rung on the ladder type of childhood and like had to manually work her way out of that situation through, you know, her own skills, maybe a bit of duplicity as well, into a career and a lifestyle that she is incredibly proud of now. And that hustle shouldn't be ignored. We talked about this with Jesse as well. You learn a lot about yourself and a lot of like bare bones people skills, I would say, working through all that. I love what Karla had to say about code switching, right? Again, much like Jesse, I think she has that experience of like growing up in more lower income places with like interacting with those people and then going to academia and interacting with very different types of people. She has a really good grasp as to all the different types of personalities that she might possibly run into in Survivor. And I think that's going to then overwrite, much like Shan herself, who I think was not the strongest challenge competitor. I think that would probably overwrite a bit more of those physical limits. Like I could see a situation where Coco loses and they're like, yeah, but we can't lose Karla. Because I think Karla could also be somebody that is working hard, again, has a very hard work ethic. I could see her ingratiating herself by working around camp as well. There are just so many arrows pointing up right now for me with Karla. My only downside is she talks about this in her video, and she spoke about it a bit right at the end of that interview, this idea of like, I know how to deceive people, sometimes have to steal to get to what I want. She said in her video she doesn't have a hard time lying. And much like we saw with Shan, where again, like, all of these little webs she built ended up crashing down in one fell swoop. This is sort of the new era of Survivor, where this happens with players like when we lost Hai, Drea, and Omer, you know, right in a row, that the people that are sometimes often most out in front end up getting clipped before making it to the end. I could see something similar happening with Karla, but I think any like sort of misgivings about her getting targeted early in the game, I actually don't see necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not too worried about her lying too much. Like, I feel like as long as you don't get messy with it, I feel like it's not going to be an issue. I think I just need to see what the rest of the tribe makeup is going to be in terms of if they're going to be able to avoid enough tribal councils. And I also could see a scenario where, kind of like Shan, I could see Karla putting herself sort of like at the center of everything, where she's able to insulate herself from potentially like going to tribal council 3 times before the merge.
That's exactly what I'm thinking of. Like, if she does end up going pre-merge, I think it would be an UA situation where, like, there are only 3 or maybe even 2 people left at the end of the day, where, like, everyone feels good about her. I'll read a couple of stuff from her bio. What is something we would never know from looking at you? People are mostly surprised at how competitive I am, especially as I get older. It's as if people think I should have outgrown that phase of my life by now. I come across as non-threatening, and it's very intentional on my part. This is going to help me in the game. And again, that's Cassidy was speaking about that as well. I don't know eventually if we're just going to have a bunch of beta players being like, I don't know what we want to do. What do you want to do? I think there'll certainly be people that will take charge. But again, much like we talked up with Cassidy, I think she has a good sense as to like when to hold back, when to make people perceive her as just like bubbly, friendly, down-to-earth person, and then be able to actually weaponize that and then utilize it later on.
Okay. Mike, anything else on Karla?
Which past survivor will you most play the game like? She does a bit of a Frankenstein's monster here in her bio. Natalie, mental and physical strength. Sarah, strategic. Michelle, social.
Hmm.
And she invoked Tony in our interview, right? So essentially she named the entire Winners of War Final Four.
Okay.
I'm just trying to think of like, yeah, I guess that would be a good player to have, right? The physical strength of Natalie Anderson. I'm assuming that's the Natalie she referenced.
But Sarah was strategic?
Yeah, I would say Sarah was more social, right? Like that was her entire Game Changers game, was like making those bonds and then weaponizing them.
I mean, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think like, I guess Sarah would be that odd sort of area between strategic and social, right? Of like what made those bonds and then utilize those bonds to be like, okay, now I'm going to make this move. Just goes to show how like there really is no such thing as strategic or social. It really is one flowing into the other. And obviously at this point, she had not seen the Challenge USA version of Sarah Lacino, or maybe she would change that answer.
Okay. Mike, let's talk about our next person. Here we go. Here is next up. Oh, it was Lindsay.
Yes, do not look her over. Lindsey Carmine, 42 years old, from Downingtown, Pennsylvania, a pediatric nurse.
Okay. Tell me more.
Yeah, so Lindsay, she'll talk about it more in her interview. She is a natural caretaker, both from her occupation and from her family. So this is very much like something for mom, you know, like I love this game ever since it first came out. I'm going to come out and be able to play the game that I want to play, obviously considering my family back home, but like, this is my opportunity to be selfish.
Okay. All right. So for her being there is something for mom. You're not saying like this is something for mom to watch the new season. Here's Lindsay.
Yeah, no. Not like, hey, if your mom out there needs another mom to watch, here comes Lindsay.
Yeah, that was what you're saying.
That'd be something interesting. We're like, oh, something for dad. Here comes Mike Gabler.
Here's Roxroy. Something for dad to relate to.
Something for grandma. Have you met Jillian?
Okay. All right. Anything else about Lindsay you want to set up before we listen to Lindsay?
No, Lindsay, is someone who has been through a lot in the past couple of years, being on the front lines of the pandemic. We hear this a lot from a lot of the medical professionals that have played. And of course, like, our salutes to those that were able to do so. And I think understandably that resilience and just immense amount of emotional and mental strain, hopefully comparatively, this will just be a walk in the park.
Okay. All right. Let's hear Lindsay.
Why are you here on Survivor?
That's a loaded question. I have been applying to play Survivor since I was 20 years old. So 22 years. But probably like 7 years ago, I started really actively applying after I watched my mom suffer from breast cancer, and then I had 2 life-threatening miscarriages, and I was ready to do something for myself. You know, I had supported my husband through law school and kind of establishing his career, and I had 2 children, and I kind of got my career off the ground. And I'm the type of person where I just love giving to others. I have a servant's heart. And so I'm constantly doing stuff for other people. And it was time for me to finally just do something for myself.
What's your history with watching Survivor?
I'm unapologetically like a super fan. I have been watching since season 1, episode 1. My mom sat me down at the very first episode of season 1, and she said, Lindsay, I've got something to show you. There is this game that is perfect for you. And I sat down and I watched it, and my family and I have been watching ever since. And I knew deep down in the soul and core of my body that I would be playing Survivor someday. I didn't know when it would happen, but I knew that it would. I am part of all of the Patreon groups, and I have a Wiggler's Wombats hat. I'm in like 3 Survivor fantasy pools. I eat, breathe, and sleep Survivor. So I'm really excited to be here.
Potato. Oh my God.
Or should I say, stop right there?
Yes. Yes. Should she have worn the Wiggler's Wombats hat out on Survivor?
That would not have been allowed for various reasons.
They might have flagged that. Yeah.
Maybe if it was just a picture of a wombat, like how Omer wore the emu shirt,
Smart.
maybe they would get away with that. But yeah, I'm intrigued. I haven't asked Josh about this as to like, did Lindsay win one? Was this a self-purchased Wiggler's Wombats hat?
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to think, is this the first
Maybe
wand
she's post show
offer?
recaps Patreon.
Though I think, doesn't there that thing with Chris Underwood that like he had previously sent in a wand off before he was on Survivor?
Yes. No, he sent one in while he was on Survivor.
That's what it is. Okay, I was trying to think if there were any other like previous wand offers who had been on Survivor, but I can't remember.
Yeah. Okay. This is actually there's a Big Brother Canada winner who sent in a wand off before he went on Big Brother.
That's what it is. Yes. Well, hopefully Lindsay will follow in that trend. We're 2 for 2 Wiggler's Wombats hat wearers end up winning the season. But yeah, Lindsay, super duper fan. She is in 3 Survivor fantasy pools. I wonder if she was in league with Cassidy beforehand and they know each other.
That would be if they have stakes. Like, oh, I hate this person from my Survivor pool.
Yeah, exactly. At CC6969 is going down. I don't know who it is, but I feel like it's her.
All right. Let's hear more about Lindsay.
Give me one Survivor winner and one non-winner who you identify with the most.
Sure, absolutely. The one Survivor winner that I think I identify with the most would definitely be Natalie Anderson. Not only is she a wonderful social player and she's very strategic, but she's a challenge beast. I mean, she has a lot of grit and determination, and like her, I'm the type of person that like I rise to every challenge and I never give up. Sari, I mean, and I'm not even necessarily sure that I identify with her, and I see a lot of similarities with the two of us, aside from the fact that we're both nurses and we have children. But there's nothing that makes me happier than when Sari Fields comes on my television screen.
What's your favorite moment in Survivor history?
Oh my gosh. There's so many really good moments. I'm a huge fan of the Black Widow Brigade. So I would say anything that involves a blind side with them. I also just recently finished Winners at War, and I loved when Denise received an immunity idol from Sandra and then used it against her to vote her out of the game. It was so badass is what it is. And I think I love that it was Denise. One of my biggest fears in playing Survivor is that I am one of the oldest out here. And historically, women my age make it to the end. They just don't win. And so when you think about somebody that's over 40 that has last won the game, it's been Denise. And I would love to be the next person to do that. So
what's one life experience you...
Yes.
Yeah, so I misspoke before. Actually, Lindsay is the one in her bio who does the which Survivor player will you play the game most like? Natalie, mental and physical strength. Sarah, strategic. Michelle, social. Carla named Sari once again as who she would play the game most like. So Lindsay is the one that's doing the Frankenstein's monster. Though in the course of these answers, she really implied that Natalie was the full package.
Okay. Apologies to Carla for getting that wrong.
Yeah, but I think that her invoking Natalie when it comes to like the challenge beast aspect is interesting to me because look, I'll admit, I don't necessarily look at Lindsay and see like this is someone who's going to kick butt in the challenges, nor does her career really inform that. But if indeed like fitness is part of her life and she talks about like some of her favorite hobbies is exercising and doing a lot of traveling. So she could be someone who proves to be a very capable asset for her tribe.
Yeah. Does she have some sort of sports in her background?
I'm not sure. What she does say what is something we should never know from looking at you. She said, people are mostly surprised at how competitive I am, especially as I get older. It's as if people think I should have outgrown that phase of my life by now. I come across as non-threatening, and it is very intentional on my part. That is going to help me in the game. So it might just be she has like a history of various small, non-main competitive sports, but just has a lot of drive and fitness in her background.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to Lindsay.
What's one life experience you feel has prepared you most for the game?
So like I said, I am a registered nurse, and I have been working the front line of this pandemic for the past 2 years. I would definitely say it's one of the hardest and most challenging things I have ever been through. And I've realized that if I can go through that, I can handle anything.
What excites you the most about the new era of Survivor?
I think the thing that excites me most about this new era of Survivor is the pace. I've been watching since season 1, episode 1. And so I've been able to watch the game change organically. Some of these players that I'm going to be going up against, they're young. And so they've had a lot of catching up to do. But I'm excited to see if I can handle this high-paced, really fast way of playing the game. There's also a lot more advantages and twists, and I want to see if I've got what it takes to handle it. So,
what do you think people will perceive you as?
I definitely think I'm going to be the underdog of the season. I was born and raised in the South, so I definitely have a lot of Southern hospitality, but I spent a lot of years living in Philly, and if you know anything about anyone that's from Philly, is that we don't take shit from anybody. So I think people are going to be really surprised with how much I'm willing to backstab.
Potato, how eager will you?
Yes.
Rob, I think this is James's opposite. I think this is the one that he's looking at in the game right now. He was looking for that one person, right, who isn't someone that he normally associate with, who might fill different other niches that he might not be able to get to. And I think the fact that they have a shared background in Philadelphia, I think I'm seeing some brotherly love here in a manner of speaking.
Yeah, that's an interesting to go there. I could see it. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot of sense, or at least something they can initially connect over. What did you make about her statement that she feels like she'll be the underdog of the season, whether it be like her age, her gender, the fact that she does come from this more like genteel, Southern background that makes people assume she'll just be hospitable. Come on in, y'all. I'm on the porch with a pitcher of lemonade. I'm assuming that's what happens in the South.
I don't know if she's necessarily the underdog of the season. I'm sure from her perspective, I'm sure she's coming in as the underdog of the season, but I don't know if she's going to be edited that way. I mean, that was kind of the edit that like Heather got at points in Survivor 41, but it was more because, in fairness to Heather, like she kind of like was so hapless in the challenges. I think that's where the underdog came from.
Right. We just need to see how Lindsay will do in that challenge where you throw the ball down the chute, and we'll see truly if she is an underdog or not.
It was like, she never gives up, but I don't think that is what Lindsay really is going for or hoping for.
I mean, certainly not hoping for. To your point, it remains to be seen as to whether or not it will end up happening. It should also be mentioned, actually, comparing to Heather, who I think had some surprising outdoor skills and experience that wasn't necessarily shown on the show. One of Lindsay's hobbies is gardening as well. So I can imagine her. Really, we talked about this last time with Vessi, Rob, right? Like her being the camp mom, I think I'm really seeing on this tribe.
Okay. Let's hear the rest of what Lindsay has to say.
How eager will you be to look for advantages in the game?
I'm not going to be actively looking for advantages to the point where it is going to be detrimental to my game. While I think advantages are important to have, I think it's also important to know where the advantages are. Advantages are only as good as the person who's playing them correctly. So if one comes my way, then I'm going to be excited, but I'm not willing to sacrifice my spot in the game in order to find them.
What's the one thing you told yourself you wouldn't do in this game?
The one thing that I said I would not do in this game is intentionally hurt somebody's feelings. I'm extremely sensitive, and I try to be hyper aware of other people's feelings. I know that this is a game and that the whole point of it is to be the last man standing, but I'm not going to personally attack anybody.
Okay. That's Lindsay.
Yeah. So surprise, surprise. I'm of a couple of minds about Lindsay as well. I think through talking about her over the course of this interview, I don't think she'll be in trouble in the pre-merge, at least not from what I'm seeing. I think she can make this bond with someone like James. I think it's interesting that like her and Carla, do talk about this like Black Widow Brigade thing and how they'd love to see it happen. I could possibly see like a women's alliance forming, or at least like a loose agreement between the three women, between the two of them and Cassidy on Coco. Where I have reservations is, and it's understandable given her occupation, does Lindsay have the killer instinct? She talks about not wanting to hurt people's feelings. She talks about having a servant's heart. Is there going to be a point where she is told you have to like cut one of your closest allies to progress further in the game? If she cares about someone to a certain point, I don't know if she'll have it within her to be able to do that. So for me, she's very much giving me vibes in this moment of someone I think could make it far, like as far as the finale. But I think for one reason or another is not necessarily perceived or able to do things that would put her in a better place to win the game.
I feel like she was somebody that we didn't get a lot of how she is going to play the game in terms of what she was saying. We found a little bit about, not going and looking too much for the advantages. But unless I missed it, do you have a sense of how she's going to play?
No, I think it's very much about like, I'm going to be underestimated because of my age, because of my size, and because like I'm nice, but in behind the scenes, that's going to allow me to make the moves that I want to make. So it seems like that's going to be her initial approach, is like come across as that warm, Southern, motherly type. And then when she's able to get that social capital, spend it and make the moves that she wants to do. Again, my holdup is if whether or not she's able to really capitalize on that ladder.
Yeah. And I feel like that is a formula that has not gone well for a lot of the Survivor moms, of the sort of like, okay, let me get in everybody's good graces and then I'll make these moves when it happens. So that is the plan, that hopefully she has a different way to, sort of frame that at the final tribal council.
Yeah. So a couple of other highlights from her bio. Pet peeves: people that cut in line, smacking gum, and when people play games on their phone and don't put the phone on silent. Luckily, I think all three will not be happening in Survivor unless there's sort of line that I'm not aware of.
Maybe there's a line cutting. Yeah. When you are waiting like in the pregame for like to eat, it's like cafeteria style.
Or even in the camp, right? If it's like, okay, rice is on and someone's like cutting in front of you to get their portion, that could be something that causes a big kerfuffle.
Yeah.
But yeah, not a lot from Lindsay's video either. She talks a lot about how being a nurse has allowed her to like thrive in chaos. She does say that playing Survivor will allow her to take risks that she can't in her everyday life. I don't know if that just means like living out in the jungle with your underwear for a month, or like cutting your best friend in the game. I'm not entirely sure, but I do think that Lindsay, she also invokes some advice that her dad gave her, which is, if you're in the last mile of a marathon, are you going to speed up or are you going to slow down? And so, indeed, if Lindsay does make it to the end game, maybe this is a thing where like she then just decides to go balls to the wall, super cutthroat at the end. And I don't know if that would do well in front of a jury.
All right, Mike, anything else about Lindsay?
No, I'm very excited for Lindsay. Again, I think she has a solid chance of making it far. And I'd love to see her essentially invoke like what she loved about what Denise did, right? In betraying Sandra directly, and be able to do that as well. Because I think that's the one component to me that I think is missing from her game.
Let's talk about the final member of this tribe. It's Ryan
Medrano, at 25 years old. I should clarify, he is actually the youngest member of the tribe. Cassidy is at 26, though. Again, it's a little variable between the two. I think she certainly looks younger than he does. He is a personal trainer and also a warehouse associate from El Paso, Texas.
Okay. All right. Anything else we want to set up about Ryan before we hear from him?
I do not want to tell his story for him, because he has maybe one of the biggest, wildest stories from his life going into this season.
Let's hear from Ryan.
Straight from the horse's mouth.
Okay.
To start off, tell us about yourself. Give us your name, age, and occupation.
I am Ryan Medrano. I am 24 years old, and I work two jobs. One as a personal trainer and one as a warehouse electrical associate. So I work in an electrical warehouse, cutting wire and getting orders together for electrical contractors.
Why are you here on Survivor?
I'm here on Survivor because it's always been something when I see Survivor on TV or I watch it myself, I'm like, that looks amazing. That looks like these people are going through life-changing events and really finding more out about themselves that really can't be established without pushing oneself to their limit.
What's your history with watching Survivor?
So I'd seen a few episodes as a kid, and I didn't watch it for a while because I was busy, growing up, being an adult. But I met my girlfriend about 3 years ago, and that's one of her favorite shows. Whenever I'd ask her, what do you want to watch? Survivor? And it's something that I'm watching and my heart's beating faster than a scary movie, and I get so attached to each character. I'm so empathetic, and I'm like, no, they're gone! So it's wonderful. I love Survivor. Every season's been spectacular to watch and heart-pounding to go through with them, even on my couch.
Potato, give me.
Yes.
All right. So this was, we laughed. We scoffed when Jeff Probst said a year ago, it's like the monster in a scary movie. But here Ryan is directly comparing Survivor to that.
Right. He's like, no, don't go in there. Don't do it.
No. Ryan's a character. He has a lot of, for lack of a better term, electricity to him. I guess it makes sense given his line
cutting
of work.
wires. Yeah.
Yeah, but maybe some of that got into him. But yeah, he's very fun. A little bit of shade of him being like, yeah, I just stopped watching Survivor because I had, became an adult.
Yeah, had things to do.
Exactly. Then watch
Busy.
Survivor.
Yeah.
But I also like the fact that he got back into it via a girlfriend who's just a weird impression of her, but I love it regardless.
Yeah. Okay. Hopefully we'll get to hear from her at some point. Okay.
I love Ryan. He's great.
I want to watch Survivor. Yeah. Here's Ryan.
Give me one Survivor winner and one non-winner who you identify with the most.
One Survivor winner is going to be hard because I usually identify with the non-winners. One of the non-winners I really identified a lot with was, I would have to say, Rupert or Xander. Xander in the most recent 41. Xander was in 41. And he was so charismatic, and so he played the game well, and he was very empathetic. And he didn't win, but he really put his heart out there, and he really didn't think he'd make it onto Survivor. And as a kid, I really was bullied, and I was put through a lot from people that, were around me. And I wouldn't think I would be on Survivor. I really wouldn't have until I grew older and grew to love myself. So that's one of the non-winners. And one of the winners I liked would have to be Poverty, because the way she played the game, I guess, it was really how some of the things I want to do, not that I identify with her, but I want to be able to lie well. And I want to be able to get around and backstab people to get further in the game, not because that's the person I am, but that's because that's the person I'm not in the real world. So it's going to be interesting getting into those characteristics and playing that character.
Potato.
Yes.
Yeah, I like what you said about Xander.
Like we said about Potato. Yeah. Hearty potatoes. So yeah, Xander comes up, one of the 41 members. Boy, Parvati is so popular this season.
Listen, everything old is new again, right? It's interesting because I don't think her name was mentioned once in the bios. Actually, Kelly Wentworth was mentioned much more. And people were really fashioning, is she the new Parvati? But lo and behold, in these interviews, for whatever reason, they're like, yeah, Parvati. I'll mention Parvati here. What I find intriguing about Ryan is that he mentions like Rupert and Xander, and he talks about in his bio, which past survivor you play the game most like. Rupert, I like the way he provided food for his tribe, which helped them keep their strength for the challenges. And then would not necessarily say Rupert and Xander were like the most cutthroat, malicious, villainous, quote unquote, players out there. Rupert was essentially very honorific to his detriment. But Parvati, he says, oh, I want to be able to like, cut throats. It's not something I really do in real life. So there's a little bit of a dichotomy there where I do wonder if push comes to shove, just like we talked about with Lindsay, like, will Ryan be able to make those Parvati-esque moves? Will he be able to cut throats and lie, even though he doesn't do that in his real life?
I don't think so. I think that he, like, I don't think it'll be a situation where he's going to try to do it where he doesn't normally do it. Like, but I think it is odd that, you know, hey, this is not something I do in my real life. So I want to go on Survivor and get to do this thing. I have a feeling that he's probably going to be like as trustworthy in Survivor as he is outside of the game.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I'll call my shot right here. He is absolutely going to be like our workhorse around camp. He's going to very much be, he invokes Rupert, this guy that's going to go out. He's going to provide for his tribe. He lists in his hobbies that he does like fishing and hiking. So he knows a lot about the outdoors. Also carpentry. I think he's going to be our shelter builder here. I think he's going to be that guy that's going to really endear himself early on as like the one that's working hard around camp. He's this blue collar worker as well. So he certainly has that mindset, who I think people would want to bring in as a number, but won't necessarily be or need to be leading any sort of charge against anybody.
Okay. All right. Let's go back to Ryan.
What's your favorite moment in Survivor history?
One of my favorite moments, and it's a little silly, it's nothing huge, but one of my favorite moments is when we meet Rupert and he steals the chickens off the boat when they're diving in. I think the green team, and the green team's like, "Where's my chickens?" And then it shows Rupert with a big smile, and he's like, "I took their chickens." And it's like, to me, he took an advantage at getting, I think it was 2 extra chickens for his team. He took that risk, and he was able to get those without people noticing it was even him and paying any consequence. So in that sense, I really felt like Survivor was a game, and he's a great person, but he played the game in that moment.
Potato.
What potato? Okay, yeah. We need to let's figure out what's happening here, because I feel like Ryan is accidentally mixing about 3 different seasons.
Yeah, we got some Mandela effect going on here. Okay, so Rupert famously stole the sneakers.
Yes, he stole the shoes from the Morgan tribe, who did not wear green. They wore orange. I thought maybe initially was he talking about Jonathan Penner in Cook Islands, who stole the chickens from the Green tribe, I think from the Puka tribe.
Oh, interesting.
But I do believe that Penner immediately got caught for it, that it wasn't like, oh, he got away with it and nobody necessarily
would have gotten away with it if it wasn't for you meddling kids.
Exactly, though. He was playing more so with the meddling kids on Raro at the end of the day.
They want to get faded.
Now I'm just thinking about comparing the Scooby's gang to the people on Raro. I guess
as long as it's not the Scoopin' gang.
Oh, God, yeah, throwing coconuts at people's heads. Yeah, I guess Adam would be Fred, Parvati would be Daphne, Candace would be Velma.
Yeah?
Flicka is Shaggy, and Penner Scooby-Doo.
Ruh-roh.
Do you have any ruby racks in there, Probst? Come on.
Okay. All right. All right, Ryan, his heart's in the right place.
Definitely. And I think it's interesting, though, that like he evokes a Rupert moment. He talks about how much he loves Rupert being a good guy, but one of the moments he loves is when he stole from the other tribe. So again, it's this idea
but he had a good heart. Yeah.
But he had a good heart. And so maybe that's the way that Ryan will play. Of like, yeah, I'll dupe these people, but I have the best intentions behind it.
Okay.
What's one life experience you feel has prepared you most for the game?
One life experience that could also be looked to as a handicap, I guess, but to me, it's just the way I live, is my growing up with mild cerebral palsy from being born early. It has made to where they said I would never walk. My mom took me to therapy for 4 years, every Thursday for 2 hours, and eventually I started to walk, and I started to run, and I started to swim, and I started to climb. And I can do the things I do today because of her. But it also affected the way my mind works. I don't process things almost instantly like regular brains do. You tell me something and it comes in, processes, it shifts around, it processes again, and then shifts out. It's like if you tell me, go pick up a book, I go, there's a book over there. They want me to pick it up. Okay, I'm going to go over and pick it up, and I do it. But through life experiences, I've learned that learning body language and facial expressions and tones and voices when I'm talking to people or feeling the energy or the vibe of the room, it really has helped me to anticipate and try to plan my next step around people and around the things in my life so that it's not noticed. People are like, hey, you would never know. It's because I work so hard at learning people and getting different perspectives in life, that I can come to any situation and try to be on top instead of a second behind.
Potato. Yeah.
Yeah. So wildly beautiful story from Ryan. Being born 3 months early, diagnosed with mild cerebral palsy, going from somebody who had to learn to talk and walk for 4 years in therapy to like being a personal trainer now, but then also coming with this sort of additional, effect of, because his brain takes a second to like process what someone says to him, he almost has to anticipate what is going to be said to him based on reading different expressions.
Yeah, and that might be a very interesting skill set to have, because I kind of feel like maybe in a lot of ways, like what people are saying to you on Survivor is not as important as what they are doing. And so like being sort of like more like tuned into the body language of what people are saying and doing, that might be, a little bit of a different insight that he's able to take away. I think Ryan is going to be a big fan favorite on the season.
Absolutely. I think he has a big personality, has an incredible story. Now, look, this is a bit apples to oranges, but I feel like I'd be remiss not to ask you, Rob. So you ended up playing in the Amazon with a differently abled contestant in Christy, who, again, very different from what Ryan went through, but I know that she also had to kind of like talk about reading body language, right? Reading lips, be able to shift her perspective in a game of duplicity to try to make her way forward, as opposed to relying on skills that, a lot of us are privileged to be born with and exist with. Do you think like the way that Ryan has to navigate, do you think that could be tougher to do? Or to your point, is it more so actually more of an advantage to be able to have to rely on the nonverbal communication over the verbal communication in a game like Survivor?
I don't know if it's going to be an advantage, but it's going to be interesting to see if, the information that he gets ends up like serving him better or differently than somebody who is relying more on what people are saying. Christy is somebody who, was an amazing person, but was not somebody who really was, Survivor super fan, or somebody who really was a person who like loved the game of Survivor. Ryan is coming in. He seems to have more of an appreciation of the game. And so we'll see if maybe he might be able to have like some better luck with things.
Yeah, I think that it's this idea, again, of you could have the skills. And it's not to say that the takeaway, I guess, from both Christy and Ryan's game is that it's less about, their abilities, putting them behind, and more so about like the way they interpersonally get along with others. But it's something really interesting to pick up on from Ryan's perspective as to how much will that be to his benefit or his detriment. Because I think he raised a very valid point that Survivor is a game where people are not true to their word all the time. So sometimes you just should ignore the words and look at the bodies in general, no matter like how the way your brain works.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's go back to Ryan.
What excites you the most about the new era of Survivor?
So what excites me the most would have to be divided into two groups. The diversity that is brought to Survivor nowadays, the amount of different culture that's brought in and put not against each other, but with each other to mingle and to see every walk of life. But then having that diversity use these new twists, like the hourglass or the beware idol or the beware advantage. You get to see how this new generation or this new group of people with new perspectives use these new twists to their advantage or to their downfall. So I really am fascinated and excited to play this very new season of Survivor.
What do you think people will perceive you as?
I hope people perceive me while watching as a strong-hearted, empathetic individual that understands that it's also a game, that has love for everybody he comes across, but knows at the end of the day, it's about him getting to the end. Not because he wants to do these dirty deeds, but the dirty deeds need to be done. So on the island,
get him on Tough
in
as
my
Nails.
tribe, I'm going to want to come across, or at least I want to be read as empathetic and trustworthy and reliable. I want to be a provider for both emotional and physical comfort, because I am a personal trainer. And if you have any kinks and any stretches that you need to learn to make you feel better, to participate better in the next challenge, or you need food and I can go get it. I want to be that provider so that when it comes down to voting somebody out, like Ryan helps us both physically in challenges and with food, like, and emotionally. I'm so connected with him. I just can't get rid of him. We're going to pick the next guy. So I want to be somebody that is dependent on so much they don't want to get rid of. I want to be that crutch under their shoulder, keeping them standing.
What type of player are you looking for in an alliance?
A type of player that I'm looking for in an alliance, and let me be honest with you, I want 2 people in an alliance, and I want those 2 people to find 2 people. So now we have six people, or 5 people in our alliance. That's power in numbers, but loyalty with the first 2 people I find. Being able to trust, being able to understand their body language so that if they ever do come a point, because there will be a point at the end if we make it to the end where they'll have to lie to me, I'm able to tell that, or at least for them to tell me the truth. Hey, we're thinking about voting you out. Give me a reason why we shouldn't. And then I can play my cards. So somebody I'm loyal with and somebody that'll be truthful back to me so that I can actually have somebody out there I can trust and not be paranoid 110% of the time.
Okay.
That's Ryan. That's Ryan. Yeah. So I think just that answer that he gave a couple of questions back, right? Of like, I want to be a physical and emotional crutch for people out there. I think that's what we're going to see of Ryan in a nutshell. I think we are looking at really straightforward, the big provider, the big guy, and, camp provider of the tribe. I don't necessarily know if, again, he's going to be able to make these big cutthroat moves to get him the win, but I see him making it pretty dang far. Honestly, I compare him a lot to Jonathan from last season in terms of both the position he'll be in on the early tribe as well as like the way he'll be regarded. I do think he'll be a big threat in challenges when it turns individual. He talks in his bio about, why will you be the sole survivor? He says, I'm a triple threat. I can socialize easily. I'm naturally strong and quick in puzzles. So I think any Achilles heel you might see with him in challenges, I think is going to be as strong as every other muscle in his body. That might make him a danger later on in the game. But I do think he is somebody who will be perceived early on as just, as he talks about himself, a very reliable force and person to look at, even if he is, speaking of the Scoop and gang, trying to create his own pyramid scheme of allies behind the scenes.
Oh, no. The thing for me is really about who is he going to link up with as an ally? Like, if he could be with somebody who can sort of like, keep him, focused on the right things, not trying to go off and steal anybody else's chickens when he shouldn't be. Like, I think that he can be a real force in this game, but I think it's really he's very ally dependent.
I could see him and Karla linking up. Maybe it's because I could see Karla really linking up with anybody, but for some reason I could see them sort of just like come together. I think she is someone that could easily keep him in the loop. Again, going back to like the relationship that Shan had with Brad, another example of like the stable workforce of the tribe and the person that was socially manipulating everything behind the scenes. I think you'll want to have Ryan on your side because, again, to the point that he vocalized, I think people aren't going to want to get rid of him at all in the pre-merge. So he's a number. As long as James didn't put the no vote parchment inside of his bag, like he's still a vote you can count on. And so I think it'll be a race to see who ends up getting him first.
Yeah. Okay. Mike, what else do you have from Ryan's bio?
So what is the accomplishment you are most proud of? Ryan says, my connection that I made with my mother after her stroke. I helped her to understand that just because she wasn't the same as before didn't mean she couldn't live a full life. She just had to approach things from her newfound perspective. Man, Ryan for president. This dude has like such a
He's
good
got a lot
heart.
going on. He was a great guy. Really, really nice guy. Yeah.
Now this makes me even more nervous for him in the game of Survivor. Like, I'm not sure if he'll be able to do it.
Yes. Okay.
But yeah, he has a really fun little sound clip at the end of his 1-minute video where he absolutely loves Jeff Probst. He's like, yeah, but these twists in this game, it makes me just want to be like, God, Jeff, you little, I love him. It's clear I think Jeff's going to really love interacting with Ryan over the course of this season.
I think so. I think that's a kind of energy Jeff really enjoys.
Yeah, and then, once the family visit happens, then his girlfriend will be like, Ryan, I was with Diddy on the chopper. Playing Survivor.
Wow, that'll be a great story.
Yeah, well, one of many stories in Ryan's incredibly inspiring life. So that's our Coco tribe, Rob.
Yeah.
Really,
okay.
really interesting.
Any
group of
pet
people.
peeves for Ryan?
Let's see. Ryan's pet peeves: bullies, laziness, self-entitlement. I think pretty par for the course, I think, with the type that we're assuming of Ryan.
All right. So, Mike, can we start to put some of these puzzle pieces together of this is our Coco tribe preview. We've previewed all the people individually. How do you see that this tribe shakes out?
All right. So I'm really looking at James and Lindsay partnering up. I do think, though, that Karla is going to be the center of this web. I think she has a lot in common with a lot of these people. She and Gio similarly come from, low-income backgrounds. She and James both come from, like, urban backgrounds. She is a bit of a caretaker in herself, much like Lindsay. I think there is a little bit of, like, shared heritage that can come from someone like Ryan as well. And so I do think a lot of this will stem from Karla making a lot of these one-on-one relationships with people. I do think James and Lindsay will seek each other out and be each other's closest allies. Ryan will sort of be that guy that everyone is pretty cool with. So in terms of the question that we like to ask here of, like, who would the first boot be from this tribe? I think it would be between Gio and Cassidy. And considering that Cassidy apparently does have this, like, pretty fit background, I think that would make her an asset. And so I would kind of have to just rule out Gio just as sort of like a process of elimination as our first boot here.
Yeah, I'm with you, Mike. I think that Gio, is in trouble as being the first boot here. I'm not sure necessarily if James ultimately ends up with Lindsay as his partner. I think I could see Karla a little bit more. I think that's I think that they certainly have ways that they're opposites as well. So maybe James goes in that direction. It'll be interesting.
It should also be noted that Ryan and Cassidy are only 1 year off. I could see a relationship between them as well if they're both into physical fitness too. That the two of them get along in that aspect, as well as being close in age. That could also be a pair that forms too. The more that I'm looking at this tribe.
Okay. All right. We'll see about the Coco tribe. I mean, I'm a little concerned about them just overall in terms of how they're going to be in the challenges. Again, I haven't seen the Baca tribe yet. So we'll see how it all comes together for them when they get into action on September 21st.
Yeah, and you never know when it comes to these challenges, right? If there is a lot of stuff about lifting heavy weights, then yeah, they're pretty stacked right now with Ryan, with Cassidy, with Karla, with Lindsay. But you never know. There also just might be untangling knots might end up being their detriment. If we'll soon see if we're saying no to Coco anytime soon in a couple weeks when the season ends up starting here. But this is another dynamic group that I think is maybe a bit less set in stone than Vesey is. Mm-hmm. And even if I'm talking up how well connected Karla is, who the hell knows? They might all compare notes and she ends up getting the first boot here.
Okay. All right, Mike. Anything else today about the Coco tribe?
No, next time is going to be our final tribe preview. We are talking about the Baca tribe, the one that we keep setting up as the big train wreck tribe of the season. Will it be as such? We're going to be talking about Ellie, Janine, Gabler, Mariah, Owen, and Sammy.
Okay. All right. That's going to be coming up later on this week. Until then, Mike, what else do you have going on?
Yeah, so written interviews up at parade.com. Actually, at the time this is being released, all my interviews for the Baca and Coco tribes should be out. If you want written versions of these interviews, feel free to check them out at parade.com. And I'll be getting into the interviews with the Vesey tribe, which you and I spoke about last week, Rob, as well, to finish out this week. Other than that, Big Brother 24, we have a double eviction coming up this week, so I'm sure people want to hear from the exit press there, as well as the Challenge USA. Survivor South Africa, more deep dives, and then over on post-show recaps, Lord of the Rings of Power, as well as House of the Dragon. You and I are both talking about from certain perspectives. You excited for all the crab feeder action we got this past week, Rob?
Oh, so much crab feeder to talk about this week. So looking forward to my podcast coming up in a couple of days.
Yes, not enough dragon eggs, but lots of crabs to be sleeping with around this time.
For sure. All right. Mike, anything else?
Nope, I'm excited. We're 66% of the way down. By this time, next podcast, Rob, we will have known everything there is to know about these 18 contestants besides how the season will play out, which is
believe
very
it or
exciting.
not, we're 2 weeks away from the start of the season.
Yeah, it really is wild. This is going to be a very short preseason. I think it's just because, again, as we talked about in our First Impressions podcast, we've kind of had our nose to the reality TV grindstone with so many things going on that Survivor 43 has been a bit of an afterthought, a bit of I'll get to it when I get to it on the chore list. Not to say that this is a chore whatsoever, but now it's popped up. And yeah, we're only a couple weeks away to exactly see how many of our predictions, hint, nearly all of them, will be completely wrong, and how many of these dynamics will actually get to play out with these fun characters that we're getting to know in these podcasts.
Okay. Well, Mike, great job once again putting this all together. Looking forward to getting into it on Friday when we talk about the Baca tribe. If you are, of course, consuming everything with Big Brother and Survivor, be sure to also check out everything that we have going on with Claim to Fame, the breakout hit of the summer. We will have full coverage of episodes 9 and the finale, episode 10, up this week at robhasawebsite.com. And of course, it's a great time to become a patron of Rob Has a Podcast. We have so much going on with all of the bonus content that we're doing around Big Brother. And of course, it is the greatest reality TV community destination to go ahead and sign up at robhasawebsite.com/patron.
Just ask Lindsay.
Yeah, ask Lindsay about it. Okay. All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Bye.